Welcome to another edition of the ROTL Lions UK podcast, episode 118. Lift up the receiver, I'll make you a believer. My name's Matthew Turner, alongside my co-hosts Ryan, Anthony and Tom, for what is, I believe, the most important day in recent Detroit Lions history. How are you doing, boys?
Yeah, good, thank you. Like I said, it's exciting. I don't get the show. Is that a reference? Is that a song?
I'm with you there, Ryan. That's terrible.
Apparently, it's a lyric from Personal Jesus, Depeche Mode.
God, I need to start doing these again, don't I?
Yeah, I am not cultured enough for that.
Neither am I. Google's a wonderful thing. Sorry to disappoint you, Anthony.
That's fine. I'm not a big Depeche Mode fan, so I was never going to get that.
So, everyone good? You had a quiet day, not getting excited about anything in particular?
Myself. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to get there, but, what a day. What a day indeed. Every NFL breaking news notification I got was about the Lions. Love it.
First time that's happened in a long time. I just realised my video was off and I couldn't see me on the screen, so what fun. Hi, everyone. We are going to get into a bit of news that's not so exciting, but potentially interesting to talk about. Then the exciting stuff, and then we're going to break down the wide receivers. Just a bit of housekeeping to begin. Don't forget our Discord channel. That's always open for newcomers. Please DM us on Twitter, or I'll send out a link in a tweet at some point soon. Lots of people on there, in numbers increasing day by day. Lots of really interesting chats, so please do join us there. College Football Podcast, as always, going into more depth about these prospects than we do on the main pod. And you guys on this week? I know you were last week.
Yeah, we're on this week. It's the final week of Pro Days, so we're going to be going through all the Pro Days Lions have and have not been at. And we're also doing our draft sleeper prospects this week. Me and Ryan are picking our favourite guys who aren't really talked about too much. So you're going to get to hear about a lot more guys who you may not have heard about so much just yet. So yeah, you join us that one on Wednesday. It's going to be a lot of fun.
If people are watching, put positions in the comments. We need to know what positions you want ideally as well. Or tweet us.
Yeah, if anyone puts punter, you're barred.
I was going to say long snapper, so that means I'm still in the group, right?
For now.
Please don't forget to like the video, sub to the stream, to the account, to wherever you do get us. That really, really help us. If you can chuck us a review too, that would be super cool. Always helps us out getting new listeners, which is why we're doing this, really. Also, don't forget about our partners at Lions Nation Unite, Herman Moore's project to bring all the hobby content creators together. It's the best place to get all your Detroit Lions news. It's a really cool little app. Kind of functions a bit like others that you might have seen in that sort of social media space. But you'll find, Micro Mike and Dose of Dion, as well as Herman and other people there. So please do check that out. We're now a Twitch affiliate, so if you've got a free Amazon Prime sub to throw our way, please don't spend any money on us. But if you can move money from Amazon to us, that would be ideal. So you get a free sub every single month to use on Twitch. If you haven't used it, but you're a Prime subscriber, you do have one. So please do sign up for free to Twitch and then just chuck us that sub. Helps us take money out of Bezos' pocket. And final news is that after this stream, 5:30 Eastern Time, 10:30 UK time, we will be having an interview with Eric Schlitt, the managing editor of Pride of Detroit, formerly of Lions Wire and other publications. Really, really excited about that one, so you will not want to miss that. But let's start with some news. We're going to start off with some signings. So we mentioned this briefly on the pod last week, but contract details have now been released for the signing of former Vikings and Chiefs cornerback Mike Hughes. It was reportedly a 1-year, $3.5 million deal, now revealed to be a 1-year, $2.25 million deal with $1 million guaranteed. I think the rest are made up in incentives, which he didn't make last year, so they're not counting against the cap this year. Or, of course, if he achieves them, counts against the cap next year. So we'll see what happens with that. Former Ravens linebacker Chris Board has been signed on a 1-year, $2 million deal with $1 million guaranteed. And the final signing here new signing, is that former Lions first-round pick, the 21st overall pick in 2017, and a Jet last year, linebacker Jarrad Davis has returned on a 1-year deal. Terms have not yet been disclosed on that. And then in terms of returning players, Long snapper Scott Daly has signed his ERFA tender, ensuring he will play through 2022 on the league minimum. Outgoing players, former Lion wide receiver Cadarrell Hodge has signed with the Atlanta Falcons, and we've released tight end Jordan Thomas with a non-football injury designation. He was signed to a futures deal in January, hadn't even been allocated a number, so that is what it is. Of all of those guys there, what do you make of all of that? Mike Hughes, I was worried about that, and then those contract numbers come out. That's barely backup money at cornerback for me, so I'm quite heartened by that, given how well he played last year in bits and pieces. Board looks like he could be a terrific signing too, as a Reeves Mabin kind of replacement, and maybe we'll leave Davis for a moment and talk about him in a second. But what do you make of them two?
I like Chris Board. I think Harbaugh's come out and said today that he's a great leader. He's a supreme special teamer. He can roll in. He can be a rotational. He could win a job. He thinks he could do really well in Detroit, and it seems like they're quite sad to let him go. Thought that they made him an offer, but they couldn't agree to terms. Mike Hughes was underwhelmed when he came out. The Vikings, another bad pick by them, but in the slot, looks like he had a career year in Kansas City. I think he offers some good depth because currently right now, you'd probably put AJ Parker there as maybe the starter this year. So I think he offers a good level of competition to him. Jarrad Davis, don't know, don't care, don't want him. So you can pass me on Jarrad. I don't like him, not interested.
The Mike Hughes piece is interesting, I guess, because we've obviously got a lot of young guys who stepped up last year. And whilst he's been a disappointment, he was a late first, I think, wasn't he, with the Vikings? But yeah, so a high pick. I don't think it's a bad thing to get guys who had a load of snaps in the league in our corner room. What concerned me a little bit more was I listened to the Athletic pod earlier today with Chris Burke and Nick Baumgartner, and they were talking about penciling in Hughes as the starter. That would make me more worried unless he has a big jump in performance. But like I say, I think to have in that corner room, I personally quite like it on those terms.
Yeah, they're steady signings for us. Nothing that's going to, blow the doors off at the minute and revolutionise the franchise. But I'm happy. Hughes for the money is on, like you say, it's backup money. Hopefully he's able to come in. They are all able to have a good scrap back there, and a few of them will rise to the top, nail some of those starting spots down and be big for us going forward. So I like that one. In terms of boards, I'm not too fussed at this moment until I see more. It's another special teams linebacker who could potentially be a linebacker, but I really desperately want a good linebacker in the draft now because I'm not feeling comfortable about the position at all.
No, that's absolutely fair. I mean, I guess the thing about Mike Hughes is, and I know PFF grades, I know that a lot of people don't like them, but we all were lauding Jerry Jacobs for having a really good year. PFF grade is 65, and I think Mike Hughes had a 72 overall grade. That would indicate that at least on a down-to-down basis, he played slightly better than that. And I mean, that would be super impressive to have those guys pushing each other at the very least. About Jarrad Davis, I'm super pumped he is back. I was a guy I always liked, saw 100% effort from him always, but sometimes seemed to be a kind of headless chicken out there. And I mean, you have a look at the uptick of some of the guys who were here before the new regime and how far some of them have come last year. Amani or Awari sticks out in particular, but others have taken a leap. I just kind of feel like he's someone that we really let down while he was here, because I don't think he gave less than 100% ever. And so coming back with some better quality coaching, I'm hopeful we'll see something of him. But we also, not only did we fail him coaching wise, but I think we failed him in terms of scheming his skill set correctly. Like trying to play him as the Mike just clearly didn't work. That isn't suited to what he does well. What he does well is blitzing. And I feel like Hassan Reddick had exactly the same problem when he was at Arizona for the first 3 years of his deal. And then the final year of his rookie contract, they effectively moved him to edge. And he got 15 sacks after being a total bust, and then got himself a bumper contract elsewhere. I'm hopeful that he can find a new career as I think he could be a Sam or a Will. I think he could play either role pretty well, but kind of blitzing a bit more off the edge in a 4-3 scheme, or maybe as a 3-4 outside linebacker when we play 3-man. I don't know about you guys.
Oh, let's not sugarcoat this. He's not going to be a starter in any way, shape, or form. I really like him. I listened to the interview the other day. He's a very humble guy, but I mean, it's easy to blame us for all the problems there, but it's a two-way street with player as well. He didn't perform very well for us at all for a lot of his tenure here. He's been away for a year. He's had injuries. He's not had the greatest form in the world. And if you're talking about coming in and using him just as a blitzing linebacker, finding a route from there, well, problem is we already have our blitzing linebacker. We drafted him last year, and he's a damn sight better, or he's going to be a damn sight better. That's what Derek Barnes is here for. If we can't just find a position for him to be here and blitz, he gets used in coverage a lot because that's what Aaron Glenn expects of his players to be able to do. He's going to need to do coverage work. And what was it? 17 targets last year. He gave up 15, nearly 200 yards. His coverage has never been his strong thing. And it just doesn't seem to me that he's going to fit in there. I'm not just putting him in as a blitzing linebacker. If I'm going to do that, I'll use Derek Barnes for that because that's what he's really damn good at. No point bringing him back, if you're just going to do that with him. He's not going to be a starter. Let's not sugarcoat this. This is part of the past where we've struggled and we've had bad players, and it's past we need to leave behind. If he's going to be here as some sort of very depth rotational piece, or he can be able to fight his way in some kind of small depth role, that's fine. But anything more than that, that's an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah, I love that we've all got kind of different-ish takes on this. So I'm more on Matt's side of it. What I'll caveat is, obviously, we talked about a slightly different system this year. Now, again, I think we all agree we don't think it's going to change that much from last year. But going into last year, I actually was quite keen to get Davis back until I saw the money he got. And then I was like, thank you, goodbye. But in that kind of Samson Ebukam role that he played for the Rams, 2 years ago, like you say, Sam linebacker, stand him up on the edge, can play a bit of linebacker, but really you kind of want to set him loose. Now, if I'm going to guess in this new system, that's definitely more of a bit part role, in which case I think kind of everyone's right here, which is if he's a starter, that's a worry. Unless something drastically changes, that's a worry for two reasons. One, I don't think he's good enough to get all those reps. And two, that's kind of damning on someone like Derek Barnes. But the hope for me is Barnes takes a step forward as someone who can take legitimate linebacker, we want you to do a bit of everything reps, which are not the reps I want going to Davis, because we've seen that he can't do a bit of everything. He's relatively one-dimensional. So again, a lot of this comes down to the contract, which we haven't seen, assuming it is a lowish term and we want to use him on third downs to get after the quarterback or use him in kind of rotations, then okay. If he's starting, then there's some bigger issues that we'll probably need to get to when it happens.
There we go then. All right, let's get on to something a bit more fun. Earlier this afternoon, or this morning in the US, Adam Schefter announced that Hard Knocks this summer will feature as their main attraction the Detroit Lions. CEO Rob Wood said, "We are excited about the opportunity to showcase the city of Detroit and the amazing culture we are building at the Lions." What did you guys think when this came out? I know we were one of 3 finalists. It was thought that we were potentially the favourite just because it made logical sense, but I hadn't heard anything about the fact that they were leaning this way. It's a small market nationally with perhaps the most intrigue, and we're going to get some tremendous inside access to one of the most exciting teams in the nation right now. How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel really good. Like the TV show, I don't really care about. I've never been the biggest fan, but the team under Martha has always been very private. I'd say they've never been someone to be very public about things. They've never been one to step up and air any dirty laundry. So for me, this is the first time I believe an NFC North team's done it. It's the oldest team or oldest franchise to ever be on. So I think this says a lot about how Sheila feels as well about the side. Like she's willing to let the cameras in, come watch us practice, come watch us cut guys, come watch us, come see how Dan Campbell is, because everyone thinks they know him. Everyone thinks they know what he's about, but you're probably going to see a really different side of him. Like saying, there's a lot of young coaches here, there's a lot of young players, and this should excite a lot of the rookies Like say, a lot of these kids have never had the chance to do this. We've got some big personalities, like say Jamal Williams is going to love this. He is going to be all over that. There, he's going to be filmed. So I think it's fantastic. Like say, I think it's going to be really good to see because we know the Lions are moving forward. People don't believe it because they don't support us or watch it. Now they might get a bit of a taste and understand that we're going different directions. And for later news, I think this was a box we had to tick to get the later thing. I don't think we get the later thing if we don't do this.
Yeah, so for me, this was the one I thought we weren't going to get. I thought everything like lined up as to why we should. But it felt like one of those classic things where Detroit fans know all the excitement within, because it's not just Dan Campbell, like the whole coaching staff is so interesting. And like I say, then there's players that are interesting, even though they're not big names. But I just thought it was going to go to another kind of bigger market franchise that they thought would get more numbers. I used to watch Hard Knocks a lot, especially when I was first getting into the NFL. The last kind of 3-4 years, I haven't really watched at all. But shout out the Detroit media, or as in the Lions media PR team, when they do the Inside the Den things on YouTube. I am like glued to those every time they come out. And so whilst I'd hope it will be as good as that, but just the chance to get 5 episodes of 60 minutes of Lions content is as good as anything.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing for me as well. I don't really watch Hard Knocks per se, not really that big into seeing what goes on with the other teams and that. But I mean, because of, this culture, the franchise here, I love seeing what goes on in the building now. So any opportunity to see that, whether it be Hard Knocks, whether it be Inside the Den, I'm completely and utterly down for that. So yeah, it's going to be good fun. Hopefully it changes a few outdated perceptions about the franchise and some people in it there, but I won't hold my breath, but I'm just looking forward to it. I think we all are, screw what everyone else thinks.
So I was in Detroit, as I've harped on about a lot, at Thanksgiving, and everyone knows what Detroit's rep is, right? It's fairly down on its luck town that has a fairly good amount of crime. You don't feel safe on the streets, and all of that sort of generic jazz about a town hard down on its luck. And when I was there, I was prepared for that, and I didn't see any of it at all. Now, some of the city is quiet. People are starting to return to the city having left it. So I'm not going to say it wasn't a massively vibrant place, but there's a lot of culture there. I felt safe for the whole time I was there. Some of the kind of landmarks that are there are fantastic. The people are super friendly. It was an amazing experience. And I feel bad for the inhabitants of the city currently for inheriting the rep that it has, whether that's fair or not. And I'm looking forward to the chance for the city to repair some of that twice in the next 3 years. I mean, who's to say that, free agents won't decide that coming here is going to be a good idea because it's realised actually it's a bloody good place to be right now. And when I was considering Detroit as a place to come for vacation and come and watch a game, I happened to pick up a book. Actually, I was looking at vacations with my girlfriend anywhere, and Lonely Planet in 2020 had it number 4 on its list of places to go in the world. Like, it's a place that is globally regarded as a place to go, or increasingly so, and yet not nationally. So I think it's going to be an absolutely massive thing for the city.
They always do a good job.
Bradford minus the optimism.
Sorry, Tom, you were saying?
I was just going to say they always do a good job of showcasing the local city, local community, all those kind of things as well. So I'm hoping HBO will dive heavily into that if they can get away from all the kind of kneecap biting replays and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, one of the things I think it will highlight is that people have got Dan Campbell wrong nationally, because I know that there's been talk about the fact that he's someone you want to play for, which is starting to be in the right direction of where he's at as a coach. But he really does know his X's and O's, and if there's anything that we learned when he took over de facto offensive coordinator roles, it's that he knows what he's talking about. He was inexperienced, but the offense got better all the way through last year from when he took over. It took a step back in game 1, it was just as good as it was before in game 2. And then it was suddenly lots better. The guy knows his shit, and it's going to be shown when he's coaching these guys in camp that he knows what he's talking about. And it's going to be a revelation to most people there who think he's just a meathead who is a bit rah and hands off to everyone else.
That narrative was so lazy. It always annoyed me. I didn't realize he was going to be as, I guess, hands-on and knowledgeable as he turned out to be. But I thought it was such a lazy narrative based on like the ex-blocking tight end, blah, blah, blah. I mean, Sean Payton is one of the smartest NFL minds there's been ever, maybe, but certainly in this generation. He's not just going to get some guy around who likes shouting and swearing. Like, it just makes no sense. So, yeah, lazy narratives, but I guess that's the clickbait world. And we've proved everyone wrong so far, or he has.
All right, let's move on to the most exciting news, at least for me personally, which was in the last 2 hours, Detroit has been announced as the host city of the 2024 NFL Draft. We have previously gone on the record on this podcast saying if it happens, we're coming, and I'm holding to that. I'm coming. I know that Ant wants to come. I know that Ash is 100% coming, one of the writers who I hope to have on the pod a few times between now and then too. Don't know about the rest of you guys. Ant, what's it?
No, I'm very looking forward to it. It's going to be amazing.
So the plan is, I think, at the moment, as far as I have it, to go for probably a week, which leaves a couple of days either side to sort yourself out travel-wise and do a bit of sightseeing. And otherwise, we are going to be in Detroit for the NFL Draft. 3 days of partying, meeting people. If you want to say hello, we want to be a part of that with you guys in the city. To visit Ford Field and, do all the fun stuff that you can do there. Go and see the Spirit of Detroit. And, I mean, hopefully go and meet Herman Moore as well. That'd be really cool. All the fun stuff. You guys, you coming, right?
Hell yeah. I mean, I would say we go out last week of April. We roll out there for 9 months or so, finish it up at the Superdome in New Orleans in first week or second week of February 2025. Lift the Lombardi, bring it home to London. I don't know how we're going to get it, but we'll deal with that as we go. 9 months out there, let's go.
That made the Italian job look like no, wouldn't it?
Oh, so excited. Carlton Wood said, Matthew, how is the weather like in Detroit in April? Actually, I really don't know. I do know in November it's bloody cold. I think the weather's not too bad right now, actually. Detroit weather, April, from 51 to 64 degrees Fahrenheit, which is...
Low teens, is that?
Something like that. 13 to...
That's about the same as here, then. It's about the same as here.
We're used to shit weather, so it's not going to bother us.
Yeah, a bit of cold ain't going to scare us off. Colder the better.
It says it thinks in 2022 for the NFL Draft, it should be 19, 16, and 14 degree highs Celsius. That's beach fucking weather over here.
God, yeah.
All I need now is Bradford to be named City of Culture 2025. It's made the final, and my year is complete.
I can tell you the answer to that one now, Ryan, I'm afraid.
Hey, Liverpool got it once,
Final
remember?
Four.
Liverpool's got it. Hull's got it before. Come on. Bradford could get it amongst that company. It might happen. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to why we're really here, which is to talk about the wide receivers of the 2022 NFL Draft. And we've got 12 of the top candidates to talk about for you guys. And we're going to kick it off with what some people have as the number one wide receiver on the board. It's really debatable, I think, among maybe 3 or 4 as to who is the number one. But someone who's been there as a mainstay for the last couple of seasons is OSU receiver Garrett Wilson, who's one of mine to look at. As I say, from OSU, wore the number 5. He's a true junior, 21 years old, born in July, so he will turn 22 before the start of the new season. He's 5'11 and a half, weighing 183 pounds, and in his college career, he had 32 games, 143 receptions, 2,213 yards, which is a 15.5 yard per catch average, 23 touchdowns, and then 6 attempts rushing, 143 yards, which is 23.8 yards average per rush, and a touchdown. I watched a couple of games of his, so Northwestern in 2020, which was meant to be one of his less good games, shall we say, and then against Purdue in 2021, which seems to be the third or fourth time I've watched Purdue play because someone had an especially good game against them, so maybe they didn't have the best year last year. But looking overall at what he did, he seemed to line up a majority of the time in the slot, although he did show some outside versatility. It wasn't like he was pigeonholed in there all the time, but I'd say maybe 65% of the time in the slot and 35% of the time outside, which is perhaps not a surprise given his size of under 6 foot. Tremendously efficient as a runner, no false steps or anything like that on his release. In terms of blocking, which I know is going to be especially important in Dan Campbell's scheme, he's very willing to do that. He had a really good rep against Northwestern where he actually blocked for Fields on a rushing touchdown about 4.5 minutes through the highlight video I saw in that game. Seems to have a really nice feel for finding gaps in zone coverage, just kind of sits down, manages to run them short or long just to find the gap if he can feel it. Nice footwork to fake out defenders. He's a super smooth runner. Just kind of seems to make cuts really nicely to create separation if he needs to. He's got a good double move on him too. He gives 100% effort through all of his reps. So in scramble drills especially, he's always trying to work back to the quarterback, which is really good to see. There's a really nice rep in this Northwestern game as well, where I think the running back makes like a 60, 70 yard rush from inside their own 20. And he gets upfield and is blocking for him 50 yards further up. So, you know, that 100% effort really kind of comes through even in one of his lesser known games. He does seem to struggle a little bit more on the outside compared to the slot, which would explain why he seems to see the majority of his reps in the slot. It's not a massive thing, but he can get blanketed a little bit by some more kind of physical play on the outside. I mean, this was 2020, this particular game, but I think that has carried through, so it's not a big issue for him. It's just you may see 5% less production if you see him on the outside. Against Purdue, he seemed to catch a lot of swing passes behind the line. That seems to be something that OSU did a lot. You have trips on one side, and he'd kind of fall back and catch a pass with the other two blocking upfield. Got really nice catch radius. He's not someone who's going to do it in tight coverage. He needs separation. But if he has got that separation, he's going to bring the ball in if it's within his catch radius more often than not. Let's have a look here and see what else we have. He's got the ability to occupy the minds of several coverage people at once. I've seen this a couple of different times on tape, but he, in zone, will, and I'm not really sure what it is about his routes, be able to hold the attention of one guy in zone whilst taking the attention of someone else that shouldn't be his assignment. So against Purdue, he created a touchdown all by himself by forcing busted coverage. It was really, I think it was a double move, so it looked like he was going to remain in one person's zone, double moved into someone else's zone, and the first guy remained with him. So that was that. I think that's pretty much all I have from him. Just overall, the route running is probably the best of anyone that I've seen in this draft so far. He's a proper technician. He's not a burner, so RAS score was 7.7, and I didn't really go into that, but I'm loading that up now. So his 40-yard dash 4.38, which is really good, and a 10-yard split of 1.53 serves, notice on the fact that like his acceleration of like 0 to 100 is really good, but he's not. I never really saw him take the top off a defense. So if you're hitting him in stride, he can create separation with his great route running, but I don't think that he's not Jameson Williams, who we'll come on to later, shall we say, in terms of speed. I think that's probably all I have. What about you guys? What have you seen from Garrett Wilson?
I've really enjoyed watching him. Like I say, he's very much a technician. Like I say, he's got a very nice, savvy, crisp route running. He's got a nice expanded tree. When I look at him, I don't know if I see a true outside receiver at the next level. Like I say, those big bulky corners that want to jam him up, they want to get in his face, they want to try and rough him up a little. I feel like that is where he could possibly struggle at the next level. Like I say, he's got the good line of scrimmage. Like I say, he's good in bubbles, like I say, because they've got that spearhead at OSU. So he's able to get the ball by line of scrimmage and then make people miss. He's able to use that elusiveness. If he's the number one top receiver in this draft, to be honest, it's hard to say. I don't really have anyone penciled in as that number one. I see him go very early in mocks, especially to like the Falcons at 8, like 6. They do need that depth. But all round, he is an excellent receiver. I say he plays. He's got like good radius. He plays a little bit bigger than his frame. He was not the best OSU receiver by any chance. So I've always had other preferences, but I think he probably just takes it for Olavey for me as probably the better of the two in this draft class. I think he'll go somewhere in the middle of the first round. For me, I'm not interested in Detroit because, like I say, I think he's more that will work in the slot and gradually work on the outside, or if I'm expanding role on the outside, I want someone a bit more dominant, which is not a word I really use about him. I'd say he's more of a technician, but I'd say, yeah, he's very technically gifted. He's very savvy, but he doesn't have that elite finishing burst speed to take the roof off, but does get separation well. And if you hit him in stride, it's very hard to keep up with him.
Yeah, I really like Garrett Wilson as a prospect. When we started the college podcast last year, he was one of the 5 players I highlighted to watch this season. It was my favorite wide receiver at the start of the season, all told. You can probably find the analysis I did on him in episode 1 of that there, but I got 2 pages worth of notes on him, and a lot there. It seems to be similar to what you said yourself. But for me, at the start of this season, he was the most all-round, complete wide receiver in this draft, and my opinion of that has not changed. He's probably still the most all-round complete receiver in this draft in terms of the 3 phases of the ball. So before the catch, on the line of scrimmage, one thing he really does well, and why he gets a lot of separation from guys, is he's able to fake them out. He lines up as a blocker, and then he will set off as a receiver, but he gives all the indications that he's going to come in and block, and then defensive backs can't keep with him. He's not got the elite speed, but he's got enough to be able to get that separation and to get in front of them. And that's why you will find a lot of his catches this year. He's in miles of open space. He uses his eyes to fake people out. Like I say, he aligns, incorrectly to what he's going to be doing. Again, faking guys out there. At the catch, he catches the ball really well. His route running is crisp. It's good, for what he needs. Like I said, a lot of it is more on the inside as opposed to the outside, but he can go up and grab an outside contested catch as and when he needs to. And then afterwards, he's just very shifty when he's got the ball in his hands. He's got a lot of movement skills, a lot of change of direction, pace. I like all 3 phases of the way he plays. I just think in terms of us, he's not going to be there. He's not worth a number 2 pick. Obviously, no receiver is, and he's not going to be there at 32. So, unfortunately, he's just going to be in that gap in the middle where we can't really get him. But for me, he's the most all-round receiver in the draft, and he's going to find a good home somewhere, and someone's going to be really grateful to get him.
Yeah, and as time goes on, the consensus, I think, is moving. Obviously, Drake London, who we'll come to as well, but Wilson has separated himself kind of up towards number 1, number 2 with London, it looks like, with most analysts. I'm probably actually a little lower on him. I think, and this is maybe just, we've had lots of years where it's always been, this receiver draft is incredible, and then the next year comes around, and this receiver draft is just out of this world, and it's been like that for a few years. I'm actually a bit disappointed across the board with this batch, to be honest, and that's not because I think they're bad players. It's just, I don't really see that top-end talent with any, apart from maybe one who we'll come to. And Wilson, I just find a little frustrating. He's really snappy, in a good way, in terms of his burst, and he does generate separation. But there's just some overall sloppiness. And if you hear any interview with him, he always talks about how he's the hardest worker and he's doing X, Y, Z. But there's just a bit of sloppiness for me in terms of some of his footwork, how he catches the ball. He doesn't look like a guy who so Amon-Ra St. Brown, for example, you've got endless footage of him on the jugs machine, right? I'm sure Garrett Wilson's doing the same, but there are really frustrating concentration drops, which annoys me more than pretty much anything else for a receiver. And there's a great little video, 5 minutes long, by Matt Waldman, who I respect a lot, about his clapping technique when he goes to catch the ball. again, it's not that he's a bad player, and I think he's a really nice kind of late 1, early 2. But that's really where I see all of these receivers. I don't see him as a top 10 player in the draft like a lot of the analysts do.
No, I think I expect him to go between like 10 and 24, maybe something like that. There's such a range of where people like both the OSU receivers. You know, some of the mocks now are having Olavey go down as far as 32, which I find mad. But some people have Olavey ahead of Wilson. Some people have London and Burks and Olavey ahead of Wilson. Some people have Wilson as number 1 and he's going to go top 5. Like the range of possibilities with all of these guys is absolutely massive. So it's going to be a really interesting draft for the receiver position generally as to how GMs see it, especially compared with how much talent there is at other positions this year. It seems to be a really good draft outside of maybe the top 5 in that first round, I think. So, all right, let's move on to our second player. It's Tom's. He's been looking at Jameson Williams of Alabama.
Cool. So Jameson Williams, 6'1.5", 179 pounds. Obviously very light given that frame. Slight caveat with that being no athletic testing because he tore his ACL in the national championship game. Notoriously hard to keep weight on for these guys if they are if they've been injured. So he was listed at 189. He's probably somewhere in that mid 180s in terms of playing weight, but obviously currently weighing a bit lighter. PFF grade of 81.6 last year, having not previously broken 60. So he was in the 50s for both the previous 2 years before transferring. But stats-wise, 78 receptions for 1,561 yards, 20 yards per catch, if you can do those maths, and 15 touchdowns. So big play machine. Strengths-wise, so aligned both inside and outside, on and off the line. So he's relatively versatile in that way. You see that immediate burst and acceleration off the line. It means defenders have to respect it. They have to give cushion. You can see guys get nervous when they know they're lined up against him. He shows nice agility in his release package. He's not the most polished, but because of that burst, because of his agility, you can see him get off the line nicely. Effective at then getting leverage, especially against guys in press. He was a guy who I thought might really struggle against press, and actually it wasn't too bad, which was a pleasant surprise. Athleticism shows up on his breaks because he can generate separation so easily, even when he makes kind of slight full steps and things like that. And his ability to keep his speed through his cuts. So when he's running deep routes, his ability to keep his speed when he makes a break is really, really impressive. Shows control in his route tempo as well. So he's not always going at 100%. Slight nervousness with that is quite often when you're the best athlete in the field, you can afford to do that because you know then as soon as you turn it on, you can run past people. But quite like how he showed that. And he has a gear that most college athletes just can't handle, even with cushion, even with their hips turned in phase. So one of the games I watched was against Arkansas, and he took a sluggo, which is a slant and go, versus Arkansas. And the corner has turned with him and is probably 5 or 6 yards deep of him, and he still blows by him. I mean, it's such easy speed. Later in the game, then he just takes a traditional slant and outruns a guy. And you see that crop up again and again and again. So his speed is game-breaking. It's such a threat, demands attention over the top. That frees up other teammates as well. So that's good. Showcases a nice step, double move as well. And he's effective at stacking defenders when he does have the ball in hand. So actually getting in front of guys and stacking them. So lots of strength. Weaknesses-wise, he's a wiry frame. Yes, he might be mid-180s, not 179, but for a taller guy, he is definitely wiry. He's not a hugely effective blocker. The effort is mixed, so sometimes it's there, but he's not that effective at getting the job done. He's inconsistent with his hands. He does have a few drops, really on underneath stuff more than anything. Probably not an X receiver, so not that alpha guy on the outside that you're going to line up one-on-one and expect them to just manhandle a corner, which is obviously something which the Lions have talked about wanting. Doesn't have the cleanest feet out of his break, can take wasted steps I've mentioned. Does have nice deep ball tracking, but in contested situations, he just doesn't show up. He plays to his size in that sense, even with a big catch radius. I don't think he's as dynamic or explosive as a guy like Jalen Waddle, even though if you time them in the 40, they might have similar speed. He's not quite as explosive. And he's only got 1 year of production, really, since he transferred to since he transferred out of Ohio State behind some of the guys that we're going to talk about today. ACL injury in the national championship, as we talked about as well, but that doesn't really worry me, to be honest. ACLs don't really cost people time now. Well, they cost people time, but you recover fully. So final thoughts, comments out there. You see guys like Jerry Jeudy, Deshaun Jackson. For me, doesn't have the polish of a guy like Jerry Jeudy, who hasn't really translated. I'm expecting him to have a big year this year, but he doesn't have that same level of polish. But I quite like the Deshaun Jackson thing, actually. Obviously, he's bigger and a bit more versatile, but he is a real vertical threat. So I'm, in general, a little nervous of speed receivers over the top, at the top of the draft. Is he a guy I'd like at 32? Definitely. Even with the injury, it doesn't bother me, even if he doesn't contribute as much year one. But he's not a guy who I necessarily see as kind of a top 10 guy.
I've really enjoyed watching him. I love him, let's say, laterally. Slants, digs, drags, 5 and in, 5 and out. Like I say, he is able to breeze through zones. Like I say, people think they've got a step on him. Safety thinks they can come up and then go across with him, but I've seen him blow guys out the water. Like I said, the strides, they think they're coming down, make a position, and it just breezes past them, and he just turns the corner up. Like I say, runs out, takes it to the corner, and he's just got that great, fantastic turn of speed that makes him really dangerous and able to finish big plays, which I think is something I'd really like about him. I agree. I don't think the injury will take away that big play capability. I think he'll still come back, even if he misses camp or the start of the year. And he's a really good option there. I think he's got the wiry frame. Like I say, he's got the size to put a little bit of weight on, but I don't want him to lose any of that speed. So I think he'll carry maybe 5-10 more pounds. But I agree. End of the first is where you'll see him go. He was on for he had a massive season. Like I say, it's a shame that he picked up an injury when he did, but he's a really dynamic weapon.
Yeah, I agree with most of what's said here. He is a great player, a great prospect, who's potentially going to really do well at the next level. But for me, the injury does concern me a little bit more. Obviously, ACL torn, what happens once, it can happen again. And the speed is what he bases his game on, which is why he's so deadly. And there, as it's already been said, the frame is wily. I worry about him in press coverage, trying to, battle it out with some of the bigger corners and guys up here in the NFL. I don't know if he'll have as much success there. So you need to have as much speed there as possible to make up for that. Like I say, the blocking as well could potentially be an issue as a fit for us. But if he recovers 100% from this and gets back to what he was doing, then obviously it is just the 1 year of production he's got. So obviously, hopefully he can keep that up more consistently as he gets to the NFL. He's going to be a great player, but I'm not sold on him for us, though. Not 100%. I think there are other guys I would rather take. Just me personally, though.
I think without the injury, he would be my wide receiver 1, undoubtedly. I think he plays already to a really high level, but I think his ceiling, given that just extra bit that he has, and against the level of competition that he's already proven himself against this season at least, he's the guy for me. But the injury does concern me too. So 32, I'm with Tom. I can see us taking him if he's available. I can't see him being available at 32. I would be shocked if he's available at 32. I mean, he was being drafted middle of the first round in mocks before the injury, and he has fallen a little bit in mocks, maybe to the early 20s, but that's about it. I know that people are talking about him being a really great fit for Green Bay as a kind of MVS replacement, and I actually don't hate the comp with MVS as just him being that sort of burner with better hands who's got maybe more outside versatility. But it's one of those where I can't see him falling to Green Bay either, so I don't think we're going to worry about that too much. But the change of pace, how he can turn it on, like Tom said about the rhythm thing and about not going at 100% and then turning it on. Like, some people on the line can go from 0 to 100 really quickly, but they all can't always go from 30 to 100 really quickly. And it seems ridiculous to say so, but people just sometimes can't do that, and he does it better than anyone in this draft. So potentially one of the most exciting picks, and someone's going to get a steal from him, I think. All right, let's move on to our third player, and it is someone who a current Detroit Lion has played with a lot. Drake London out of USC. Rye, you've been looking at him. What have you seen?
Yep, Detroit, London, USC, 6'5", 210 pounds. No RAS, no worked out, unfortunately. After 8 games of the year, fractured right ankle, which required surgery. But he is ready, apparently, to go and do something at his pro day, which will be very big in a week or two. He clocked up 88 receptions for 1,084 yards and 7 touchdowns. If you work that out at 135.5 yards a game, he was on pace for over 1,600 yards this year, which could have put him in Heisman finalist contention. He could have been the easiest, the top receiver in the nation. So he was phenomenal to watch all year. I really did enjoy watching him. The thing that stands out is, obviously, you look at the frame. He's got that big size. He's got room to put weight on. And he looks really good when he's reaching away from his body. So if you put something over the top or towards the sideline, or if the pass is just a little bit airy, it's a little bit behind him, a little bit in front of him, you can expect him to make that adjustment. He's able to reach out, snag it, does very well in separation. He's got good pace, but he's also can be patient. I've seen players where he wants to go deep or big, but he'll realize his quarterback's in trouble. He will turn around and look for him, which I really like. He'll come and sit in the soft zone, which Amon-Ra did incredibly well. It's drilled into them at USC that if you have to come back and help him, give him an out, like you say, he'll come back, he'll sit in the soft zone, or he'll come and back towards the sideline, giving that easy reception if he needs to scramble out of the pocket. So there's a strong IQ there, which I really do like about him. He's got nice hands. Like I say, they look nice and soft, very supple. So everything, he brings it into his body well. He knows to make the diamond. He gets the ball, brings it into his big frame, tucks, and then looks upfield. And I've seen he's got the big time flashy catch potential. Some of those guys don't have it, but he's able to just go up if it looks like it's sailing out of bounds and make a really good attempt to get it. Like I say, he's able to then haul that in with that nice strong frame. He's got a good expanded route tree. He's not the fastest, but he's got a nice stride to him. Like I say, he covers ground fairly quickly. And once he gets separation and makes the guy in the open field miss, he's very hard to bring down. Like I say, he's one of the stronger receivers. I think without the injury, he would be wide receiver 1 possibly in this draft. I've seen people taking him as high as early 10s, late teens. If he fell to 32, I'd be absolutely delighted. Or at 34, but I just can't see it because a lot of people are not put off by the injury. He's recovered now. He's had surgery. He's put plates and screws in. He's expected to have something of a workout in the next 10 days, which I think will be huge for his stock. If he works out and he shows everything's fine, I think he could be the first receiver off the board. And he has got that big time X potential like Des Bryant that people look for, especially like Detroit. Like I say, he can be that dominating physical outside guy that bullies people, especially the smaller, slender corners. He's not someone you really want to go up against. So doesn't have that many visible weaknesses. Obviously, sometimes there's a concentration. Solid blocker, shows good effort, but does sometimes show inconsistency. But that is stuff he can work on, but no real things to worry about. He had the injury nice and early, you could say. So he's had time to recover and have surgery. So I can't wait to see him work out because he looks every bit of that size and strength.
Yeah, he's out of all the receivers in this draft, he is most built towards coming to Detroit, what we need. I don't think anyone fits the profile for what we need better than who he is. Like as Ryan said, he's a big-bodied outside wide receiver. I've long championed now since Chark is here. If we need a receiver in this draft, we need an outside receiver, a big-bodied guy, just in case either Chark doesn't work out or he gets paid next year. We need to have those young guys there able to take over from him as and when. So I think that's a real big priority for us in this draft. He fits that build. Like I say, he's big-bodied, gets up well for the contested catches. Got a fair amount of speed for a big guy. Obviously, he is a lot bigger, so you have to take the lack of speed compared to others with a pinch of salt because they're all like that. So, you know, he's got the frame to come in and block well. He's a hard worker. You know, he's coming out of system. He's dealt with Keaton Slovis for the last few years. So he's great at all the contortions, you know, dealing with dodgy throwing, let's say. So, you know, I think he's the most well-suited to come here to Detroit. But like with Ryan, I agree, he's probably not going to be there again, especially with all this wide receiver trading going on. There's a lot of teams in the first round now that need wide receivers, and there's got to be a run on him quick. But if he's there at 32, then, providing we've got someone good on defense first, you run the ticket up to Goodell and you get him. That's just how good he can be. And, he's exactly what Detroit needs.
Yeah, I think he's always going to have a role in the NFL. Like for me, I don't see, if injuries aside, you can never predict that. And obviously he's had a big one, but parking that, I think his floor is pretty high because he has a way to win, which will translate to the NFL. That being said, if he just becomes a guy that you're going to toss it up to, and he's always going to turn that 50-50 in his favor, like there's only so much that gives you. And he's the one guy who I think could be a top 10 player in this draft. It's actually, I don't think he's going to run at his pro day. And that's probably the 40 I wanted to see most out of anyone in this whole draft, to be honest, because like there are flashes where I almost see, I was really high on Michael Pittman coming out. I think I had him as a top 15 guy. And there are flashes, and it might just be the same jersey, but there are flashes of that same style of winning. He's not quite as smooth and quick, but I really like what he can do, and he's quite slippery with the ball in his hands. He's not like fast, but he's awkward almost, and so he's useful in that regard too. I honestly don't know if he would run a low 4.4, low 4.5, or a high 4.6. I genuinely don't know. And it's tough with a tall, long-limbed guy to see, but there are, especially in his early stuff, there are times where he looks like he's running in treacle, and that concerns me. Obviously, he looked faster last year, I would say, but I don't know, like I say, it could be low 4.5, it could be high 4.6. And if it's high 4.6, like, okay, maybe at 32, 34, because he wins in other ways, but I don't know. So if he ended up as a kind of low 4.5 guy at the combine, I would be very much I don't think we have a chance at him, but really like him. But he's one of those guys that for me, the testing matters to his upside. Doesn't matter to him necessarily as a player. And like I say, I think he'll be a good pro. But if you're going to put top 10 draft capital, which I think someone might, I could easily see him going top 10, top 15, then I'd want to know he can move a bit.
It wouldn't surprise me if he ran like a 4.55. Something like that, but that doesn't mean that's what his play speed is. Like, I think that's a very different thing. And I've seen exactly the same on tape. He has reps where he looks like he's running much faster than you'd expect for someone of this size, and then sometimes he really doesn't. The inconsistency worries me a lot. He is a slightly better Kenny Golladay. I mean, like the sort of what he does at the catch point, his ball control, the way he controls his body when he goes up for the catch, the contested catch ability is way up there for me. And on tape, I was like, it's just Kenny. And then I saw more after the catch than Golladay was ever giving to us. So he's better than that. But Golladay went mid-third, late third. Like, I look at this guy and I think, well, he's not taking the top of the defense speed-wise. And while he may be good outside and he's always going to translate, he's a top of the second guy for me. Like, I'd be very comfortable with 32, 34. That would be fine. But I think someone is going to take him thinking he's going to do better than he is in this league. We've been used to players like him all the way through. And for his height, he doesn't quite have the physicality to match, which is fine, because he is a good technician and he does create separation you wouldn't expect from someone of his size. But I'm just slightly uneasy about him. Any blowback on that?
I think that's a little harsh, personally.
Might be. I've been known to be wrong before. Right, let's move on to our fourth guy. And our next one is, and with one of his draft crushes, I think, at least through the season, it was Trey Lombergs out of Arkansas. How did you see him?
No, you're right. He is one of my draft crushes. He was the second receiver on my 5 to watch list for this season. Him and Garrett Wilson were both on there. I was intrigued by the pair of them. So it's wide receiver from the Arkansas Razorbacks. They play in the SEC. He's been there for 3 years. He's 6'3", 225 pounds. He is a big guy, let's just say. Over his career, 146 receptions, 2,399 receiving yards, averages about 16.5 yards per catch, 18 touchdowns. He's also got about 250 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, and he averages about 5 yards per carry when rushing. His 2021 got off to a really slow start, and I was really worried at one point about him, but he rebounded quite impressively. He had 66 receptions altogether, 1,104 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. He got his rush touchdown this year as well. He made it into the All-SEC first team PFF grade of 85.8 in the passing game. It was over 90. It's just the fourth guy in the school's history to surpass 1,000 yards in a season. So that just shows you sort of the company he's in there. And he was on the finalist for the Biletnikoff Award, which is for best wide receiver in college football, but he got beaten out by Jordan Addison, Pittsburgh. He had a really damn good year. But yeah, just shows you he's had a really good year. He's working with a first-year quarterback, KJ Jefferson. He'd not thrown for 500 yards before this season. He's a name you're going to hear a lot about because I think he's going to be an absolutely wonderful quarterback going forward. But in terms of the player himself, Trey Lombergs, he's a very versatile playmaker that you get with him. So he will line up as an X-receiver. He will line up as a slot receiver. And as already mentioned, you can use him out the backfield as well. Don't let his size fool you. He is stupidly athletically quick for someone who of his size. I know it didn't translate in the combine or anything, and people ragged on him about it, but his play speed is a lot better than what you saw at the combine. So yeah. So as I say, he's got the physicality of a traditional big body playmaker, but the athletic upside is there for you to see. He's got insanely big hands. They're 5XL. They're absolutely bloody huge. And he has to have gloves custom made for him. That's just how big his hands are. But that translates then into his catchability, the way he's able to catch balls. You've got that. You use his physicality. You use his speed. He is an absolute nightmare for defenders when it comes to contested catches. He will get up there. He will bring the ball down. And the thing is, he does it in a way where he doesn't really expose himself to harm. It's really good how he's able to position himself. He's got really good IQ when it comes to that sort of stuff, I guess, just because of the type of guy he is. Like Drake London, he's not going to take the top off you with like an elite burning speed, but his long speed down the field is really good. So the separation, he does have to get involved in a lot of those battles, but it doesn't really matter because he's such a mismatch when it comes up against some of these corners, safeties, whatever, that he will win the ball for you. His movement, he's very fluid. Like I say, he's a very he's hugely sort of a mismatch thing when it comes to, say, some of these smaller guys on the defense. His yak ability is really good. Again, it's so hard to bring him down when he does get the ball, like I say, because of the frame and the strength that he possesses. He's such a nightmare to go up against. And I mean, he's playing against some of the best guys in college football as well. Like I say, he's in the SEC. He's playing against the Alabamas, playing against the Georgias. He put up about 100. He put up 190 yards on Alabama this season. Got 2 touchdowns against them. He stuck 150 past Ole Miss, 170 at Texas A&M. These are not bad teams. Some of these have got really good defenders on there, so it just shows you the productivity he's had against some of the best guys in college football there. He's done really well, like I say, with a rookie quarterback in there as well. It's been a difficult situation for him, but he's come through it quite remarkably well in the end. Like I said, there was a point where I was really worried he wasn't clicking with Jefferson, but in the end, they got it going, and he had some real big highlight reel plays this year. The one everyone sees is the one against Georgia Southern, where he takes a screen pass, out sprints 4 of their defenders who are closing in from each side, takes it to the house from about 90 yards. It is truly a wonderful thing to see there. So, yeah, he's had a great year. It's really weird, actually, because I've just been scanning through my notes from last year. So I said I did the thing on him. So I get to see how I looked at him a year ago. And when it comes to the issues in his game, drop issues was the big one for me then. He did have a lot of drop issues in college, but as the season's gone on, they've cleared up quite a lot. He's not had any really major drop issues this year. It certainly wouldn't be anything I'd be highlighting now. And a lot of scouts aren't doing either. You don't see that in the reports. And the other thing, and this is still a bit of an issue for him, he is the number one receiver out there by some way. So they manufacture a lot of touches for him. Now, this works two ways. One, it can mean guys have a really diverse route tree because they've got to be really clever, getting through all the extra coverage, all the extra attention they're given. Or two, they just mismatch them all the time and they just keep doing the same old thing and expect it to work, and it does. And that's the thing in his case. His route tree is not very diverse because it doesn't need to be, because of the matchups they're putting him with. So that's something that will need to get better at the next level, and is probably the big knock on him at the moment. But it's something that can be coached. It's something that he can improve on. So, this guy's been talked about as a first round pick for a long time. Probably definitely going to go in the first round. A bit of polish in there, but I mean, if you're looking for a mismatch wide receiver, this is your go-to guy. I'm still a huge fan of him. I don't think he's going to get to 32 again, but I've enjoyed watching him in Arkansas this year, and someone's going to get a really good receiver out of him.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. If he was on a better team and had a more experienced quarterback, I think he would be getting a lot more of that top 1-2 receiver kind of love. I think he'd have put monstrous numbers on a better side. People have to remember that he's a lot heavier than the likes of London and Watson. Like say he clocked in at like 220, 223 at some point, let's say. So he's got a good 10, 13 pounds on some of these guys and can move just as fast. So that supposed slow combine didn't bother me in the slightest. I've seen him play. His game speed's a lot better. Once he gets in behind the corner and it's a foot race to the pylon with a safety scraping across the field, he's got a good chance of getting there. Like I say, he is able to find an extra gear, and he's very hard to bring down because he's got a big lower half. He's got big, strong thighs that some of these other big receivers can't say because they're a bit wiry, but he is stockier than other guys. So he's got the strength there, which also helps him as a more sustainable and rugged blocker at line of scrimmage. So I think he could very well be there at 32. I think he will be a back end of the first half round pick after one or two of these guys have been off the board. So he could very much be in contention, and he is able to take balls to the house and make people miss if you get the ball in the hands at line of scrimmage or after that, and then just let him go and do what he does best. So he is a dynamic weapon, and the route tree can be expanded. Everything's a bit vertical right now. You can get him on digs and drags and slants, like work him inside if you want to do. He'll be more lateral at the next level. So I think he's a pretty good all-round package. Just needs to brush up, just needs to expand everything. He needs someone to just show a little bit of faith in him and give him more to think about.
He's obviously not as explosive, but look at AJ Brown coming out, another heavier guy. Burks is a bit bigger, but guy played predominantly out the slot at Ole Miss, and you see the same thing with Burks. I mean, is there, watching more of him than I'm sure I have, do you understand why he was used like really solely out of the slot? I know he did have some outside reps, but
because they allow him to pick the hole in the defense where he's going to exploit. So they let him look at where he's going to go on the pitch, and then they just sort of let him go for it. So it's kind of, they give him a little bit of freedom to do as he wishes. But like I say, the way he runs is he's always looking for the mismatches in there. So he doesn't really need to do a terrible amount. He just needs to find the gap, and invariably more than that, he does it.
Yeah, I mean, he's someone who, I know he didn't test that great across the board, but like at 225 pounds, a 4.55 is plenty fast enough. So his 40 down didn't worry me in the slightest, to be honest. Would have liked seeing a bit more lower body explosion things, but I don't know who was expecting him to run like a 4.4 flat or something at that size. It just didn't seem. Yeah, he's a nice player. And like you say, I mean, we keep saying that these guys won't get to 32, and he's another that I think probably won't, but someone's going to have to. I don't think kind of 10 receivers are going in the first round. So I think there's a better chance he falls to 32, but I could just see a playoff team falling in love with him, having a really clear game plan of how they're going to use him, and him being a stud quite early.
There's a player comp that I saw before I looked at his tape that I haven't been able to get out of my mind, which is Alshon Jeffrey. Like, it just makes so much sense to me. The guy wins with physicality, and he has enough about him to get separation too. He's just super impressive receiver. If I'm going to compare him to Drake London, because he's someone else who is big, and I do think that Burks looks bigger than 225 on tape. I felt like he was like 240 almost with how like much
thick.
physicality is. He is a
Yeah.
thick guy. But London, taller, thinner, better route runner for me. More technical ability out of breaks. But Burks, while not showing that technician status, bullies people in a way that London does not. And I think they probably have a very similar game speed, which is the reason why I want to compare both of them. Because I think if it's speed you want, they're equal for me. So I'm torn between who I'd like out of the two of them. I think Burks is more of a true X in terms of like what they could be. I know that Burks, as we've just said, operates pretty much solely out the slot, but I think Burks could be an X. And London, I think, should probably be a Z.
Burks works out the backfield as well, though. London doesn't. You get the extra versatility there, but you'll find at the NFL level he won't work in the slot as much. People will put him outside. They will put him against smaller corners and that, and they will take advantage of that. I don't think he's gonna see as anywhere near as much time in the slot as he does at college. You don't need to. He can play outside, but it's just at college where he was best, and Arkansas is not blessed with wide receiver talent, so needs must, as it were.
All right, we'll move on to our fifth guy, almost halfway through now, and our second OSU receiver, one of mine again, Chris Olavey. And it's been really interesting, actually, to watch Wilson and Olavey do their business. So, Olavey, wide receiver from OSU, wore the number 17 and the number 2. He's a senior coming out, but he's still only 21 years old, born in June, so he will be 22 before the start of the year. Just over 6 foot, 6 foot and a half inch. He is 187 pounds, posted an 8.62 RAS grade, 8.63, beg your pardon, RAS grade, ran a 4.3940, but a 1.4510 split, which is 9.98 in that metric. So he's exceptionally fast out of the blocks. Didn't run any of the agility grades, which is really what I wanted to see from him, because can he do it laterally? But he is a burner. He is really, really quick. I mean, he ran a 0.01 slower than Wilson did, but he looks fast, and I think, is regarded as faster in terms of play speed than Garrett Wilson. In terms of his stats, 38 games for OSU, 175 yards, 175 receptions, 2,702 yards, 15.4 yards per catch, and 35 touchdowns at college. Also 3 attempts for 5 yards rushing, nothing much to write home there. Watched 2 games of his, both in 2021 against Penn State and then against Michigan. Primarily played outside as the X receiver against Penn State, which I found interesting. I mean, I don't think that OSU really had a true X, and I'm not sure I would project Olavey in that role, given that he's only 6 foot and he doesn't really win with physicality. He's not someone I want to go up against a big receiver, but that's where he actually played a lot against Penn State. Against Michigan, he was kind of moving all over the place. The guy doesn't really seem to have an issue with press man, so he seems to be able to get off his block very, very well. His route tree is mainly vertical, so you're going to see him go down the field a lot, but I wouldn't like to see him do any shallow crosses. I don't think that's really his game. His route running is good, but he's not quite the level of technician you're going to see from Garrett Wilson. That is not his bag. That's not to say he's bad at it by any means. It's just when you're on the field with Wilson, you're instantly going to be compared to him. He's not quite up to that metric, but he's certainly better, I would think, than, say, Trey Lombergs in that respect. He's also a very willing blocker downfield, much like Wilson. You'll see him 30, 40, 50 yards downfield. It's been drilled into him to give 100% all the way through, and that really, really shows. He's got it in him to have a really good double move. So there was a rep for a touchdown against Penn State. He's on the right-hand side in the slot, runs a post route, and then cuts into a corner route about halfway through, finds a hole in cover 2 over the top. Really, really nice catch too for a touchdown. And what else do we have? It seems to just get lots of separation in his routes, whether that's with speed or with, like, I said his route running is not the best, but it seems to somehow work. I don't know whether that's because of who he's playing against at the college level, and he's just not going to get that in the NFL. So that gives me a little bit of pause, perhaps, that just he's playing against some poor corners, potentially. I mean, maybe that's not true, but it's really hard to say because he's not Wilson on tape in terms of his route running. He's just not. But it seems to work. So I do wonder whether that gap will kind of close when it comes to the NFL level. Against Michigan, he didn't have too much going on for him that day. One thing I noted in this particular game, and I don't know whether it's just things weren't going OSU's way in that game, because obviously Michigan had one of the biggest wins in their recent history, but halfway through the game, when things weren't going their way, he seemed to stop bailing on his routes a little bit. When he knew that the ball wasn't going his way, he seemed to not run them at 100%. And I just wonder whether, not that he was giving up on the team, because obviously when he knew it was going his way, he was still running them at 100%, and you saw that as well. But, sometimes the misdirection is going to cause something to happen. If it's a running play and you're still running at 100%, the safety has to account for you a little bit more than if you look like you're not really that bothered. And he didn't. So that worries me a little bit. His suddenness when it comes to, say, something like curl routes is really impressive. So working back to the quarterback and then kind of sitting, he stops on a dime. That's really, really impressive. Something that I haven't seen from too many people in this draft class. Overall, I'd say that he seems to do everything well without being exceptional at particularly anything. Fast enough to give slower defenses issues, but against more athletic cornerbacks, I do worry that he lacks a little bit of something special to beat those guys. I think he's going to do well against bad teams in the NFL, and I worry about some of the better teams. Struggles in contested catch situations, so he's a good catcher, but if he's been given tight coverage, if someone sticks with him, I'm not sure you're going to want to be throwing him the ball. And then my last point was about press man, which I've already covered. So what have you guys seen from Chris Olavey, expected to potentially be available at the bottom of that first round?
See, it's really interesting because, again, I'm going through the notes I did on him last year because me and Ryan had a list of guys we went through, and he was on that. And just to see sort of where he stacks up against it now, the biggest thing on the positives we had, one was the athleticism. He used to be a sprinter in school, and you can see that that's the case. I mean, just, the speed he plays with is excellent. That's something that hasn't changed there this year. But his biggest weapon that, was on his arsenal that I put there was his burst, and that's not changed. He's got that burst speed, which allows him to get separation from DBs and that which he needs because of his frame. Obviously not the most physical guy in the room there, not the best frame. So he does need that. And yeah, that's stuck with him there. The footwork at the line of scrimmage is as impressive as it gets. That's the note. That's not changed at all. He's great when he's coming off the line of scrimmage. He sells routes better than anyone probably here. That's why you'll see a lot of the time he gets so much separation. He completely fools DBs, linebackers into thinking that he's going somewhere, and then he just hard cuts and he's gone. And again, that has not changed for me there. And I also put there he used him in multiple alignments. You said he worked a lot in certain positions, but I did notice that this year he did seem to maybe lessen the amount of alignments he was used in there, but it doesn't mean he's been any more less effective. But I mean, when you've got Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith and Jigba lining up with you as well, I mean, hey ho, you don't really need to get too fancy with it. You've got three of the best receivers in college football, so no issues there. On the negative side, the physicality was the big thing, and that still is an issue. The downfield blocking as a receiver could be better given the frame that he has. Obviously, it's a huge thing in the NFL now, and I've not seen really much to change my opinion on that as the season's gone. Also, when it comes to contested catches, it can affect him because most of his catches is in so much space because he's been able to create it. You don't really see him in many contested catch situations, but he will struggle sometimes with that. The third one I had, which has just completely been blown out the window, is he isn't a threat to make yak. That's just gone. I don't know what the issue was with him last year or what we saw on the tape there, but he wasn't this year. He's put that to bed. He gets as much yak as you want, given the separation he gets on guys. Only other thing that's going to hurt him is he doesn't do special teams. He's done one kick return and one punt return in his entire college career. Garrett Wilson does special teams as well, and obviously that's a big thing for receivers at the next level. So obviously he's going to go really high, you're going to get a receiver who's probably one of the best at creating separation in the class, and you're going to get so much upside with him. But the physicality and the lack of special teams will maybe put some teams off valuing him so highly. But again, really great receiver, and that OSU offense was crazy to watch this year. 3 of the best receivers in college football. Just after the first couple of weeks when it found its footing, they were just putting up 500 yards a week for fun, and it didn't even make it look difficult. That's how good these guys all are.
If this was a Green Bay Packers podcast, which thank God it's not, I would be banging the table for Chris Olavey, and I am worried if he ends up going there. He's probably as close to my guy as there is out of this receiver group. Not even that I necessarily think he's the top guy, but he seems to be rated a little lower than the others. I really like him. I think he's polished with his routes. His release package is excellent. And I don't know how he tested agility-wise. I don't even think it was necessarily that good, but it shows up if guys try and press him. Despite his lack of physicality, and he's not going to be somebody who gets off blocks, for example, but people find it hard to get their hands on him. He's slippery. So I really like him. Now, honestly, I don't think he's a great fit for the Lions, just with the guys we already have in the room. I like to bet on talent, so I'd be very happy to take him. But in an ideal world, like I say, I think we are looking for more of an X. And if you're going to play Amon-Ra purely out of the slot, then fine, I guess. And you play Olavey more as the 2 on the other side. But yeah, I really like him. I just hope he doesn't go to the Packers or someone like that.
I think he's the home run in it. It says 35 touchdowns in 3 years. So he is the guy that takes the roof off. He takes it to the house. My worry is, let's say it's physicality. There's shallow routes inside. You're asking to potentially get him hurt. He does not want to be running into contact. He doesn't want to be running into traffic, trying to cover, take those short yards against linebackers. So he is a primary deep vertical threat. Like you say, he stops on a dive, he slams the brakes on really hard, and then turns upfield when he knows he's got a guy beat. That's where he does his best work. So I think for a team that's needing that guy that's polished, that is able to be that deep ball threat, I think he'd be a great weapon. But for me, he's not that well-rounded enough that I'd be putting him in those crossing routes and getting him to work in those physical intermediate to short ranges, because I feel like eventually, like I say, someone might break him. Like I say, he's a bit slender. He looks flimsy at times, which is good, but he's not always going to be great at the next level. So I do see him working outside and working up and staying away from that, just working on relying, getting separation.
Yeah, I definitely see him as a starting Z receiver or someone you can move around a bit. I do wonder what he could do as kind of like a scat back as well, because I think that would suit him quite well. Like wheel routes out the backfield would be something I think he could do very well. Just worth noting, after his freshman year, he scored more than 1 touchdown per game on average. But that's ridiculous, especially given COVID in 2020 and how that disrupted things and players' progress. You'd be forgiven for not doing that, but 12 in 13 games in 19, 7 in 7 in 2020, 13 in 11 in 21. What more can you say in terms of production? That's fantastic. So I really like this guy. I feel like I kind of put a downer on him in my review, and that really wasn't my intention. It's just he's a speedy guy. And
you also have to take into account he's surrounded by two definite number 1 picks. Well, not round 1 picks with him. Garrett Wilson's a round 1 pick, and Jackson Smith and Jigba's going to be a round 1 pick. So, you have to take that into account as well. It's very hard to defend 3 of these guys at once. If you're on an NFL team and you're the main guy, that does bring its added challenges with it.
Indeed. Right.
Jason's better than both of them.
He's crazy good.
Easily better.
He's crazy good. This time next year or in 2 years or whatever, whenever he comes out, you'll be talking about him on a wide receiver podcast first.
All right, let's move on to our next guy, and it's Tom's one. He's talking about Penn State's Johan Dotson. What have you seen from him?
All right. Apologies, because I've closed my notes, so I'm going to need 20 seconds to get this up and running. But Johan Dotson, out Penn State, a senior, I believe. Keep me honest with that. But 5'11", I think 178 from memory. You can see me scrambling now to try and get things up.
Has a terrible quarterback throwing at him, so take
That's
that into consideration with his. Oh, is it actually?
Yeah.
So I don't mind Clifford, but Ryan rags on him every single week on the college pod. He doesn't like him at all.
All right, we got them. 5'11", 178. RAS score of 626. Mostly due to poor size and three-cone time, to be honest. He has an almost identical athletic profile to an old Lions favorite. So him and Golden Tate are so close. Like bench 17 versus 15. They're the same height. 4.42 versus 4.43 40. 10-yard splits are the same. Broad jumpers within an eighth of an inch. Both poor three-cone time. So athletically very similar to Golden Tate. PFF grade of 87.5 in 2021. 91 receptions for 1,182 yards and 12 touchdowns. So in terms of strengths, 4.4 speed, and he's got good explosiveness. I would not say he is a kind of an elite athlete. Obviously, his RAS score is fine, but he definitely doesn't. He's not a guy that on the field you really see as a true kind of game breaker, I guess, in that sense. He's very, very well-rounded. There are a few things he does badly. Really nice detail in his routes. When I was talking earlier about Jameson Williams using, I guess, with his tempo, he was almost having different gears. So he was slowing to catch guys off and then showing his extra gear. There's almost two thoughts with this, which is you either do that or you run every route exactly the same, and therefore corner doesn't know what's coming. And obviously the top end guys can do both of those, but Dotson's definitely in that second camp. And so every route, first 5-10 yards looks exactly the same. Strong production, even with below average quarterback play. There you go. But yeah, his production was always good, even with some, it's frustrating watching some of his films, to be honest, with some of the balls that are put out there. He had some of his biggest games against the bigger teams. So OSU 2020 and 2021, he had over 100 yards, the bowl game against Michigan State. So I like guys who show up against the better teams. He's got really good hands. So he has a smaller frame, obviously 5'11" guy, but he is often extending to make plays on misplaced throws and things like that. And he shows really, really solid hands. And he has big play mentality, and he does come up some highlight wheel grabs. For me, his agility shows up better than his testing numbers because he tested really badly with his three-cone. That doesn't really come through. I think he looks fine and he's smooth coming out of his breaks. Weaknesses-wise, I actually kind of struggle with this. I don't think there's too many. Size is a problem. If you want him to play outside in the NFL, I think that's going to be a problem because he doesn't really have the play strength as well as the build. My question is, what does he do at an elite kind of NFL level? And therefore, I just worry about his upside more than anything. If I'm nitpicking a bit, he doesn't track the deep ball particularly well. There's actually a lot of guys in this class who really do. And so it shows up, I think, more for Dodson as a guy who the game definitely doesn't slow down for him when the ball's in the air like it does with a London or some of these other guys. And yeah, he's not the most dynamic athlete. So he's definitely more of a smooth mover versus zone rather than kind of exploding out of breaks. So final thoughts. He's a bit forgotten. He's almost, I don't want to say he's a punching bag, but he was one of these guys that was often included with the people we've already talked about. And as a result, the other guys all had one thing which they seem to do at an elite level, one or two things, and he just doesn't have that. So he's quite easy to pick on versus these guys with elite traits. I worry about his upside at the NFL level, especially for someone if you want to try and get him outside reps. I think he can be a solid pro out of the slot. But for me, I don't see he's just not as dynamic as someone like a Golden Tate. And I don't think he's going to be. So he's not someone I'd want to give up kind of top 40 draft capital for. If he was there at somewhere like 60 to 100, so I'll pick at 66 or 97, then sure. Again, I don't think he's a perfect fit for the Lions because we're not really looking for a slot guy so much. But that's where I see him in that kind of more mid to late day two range than where we're picking at 32, 34. Think he can become a steal and a solid contributor, but I just don't really see him as a fit for the Lions.
I I agree with pretty much all of that. I think I don't see any obvious weaknesses in the game either. I love the versatility he brings because he plays X, Y, and Z for his receivers. He plays out the backfield. He also does significant special teams work as well. He's actually a pretty decent returner. So a guy, you're getting immediate special teams upside with him. You're getting sort of scheme versatility you can use with him as well. And the thing that really stood out for me with him, he had 58 receptions for first downs this year. This is a guy who knows the downs, he knows the distance, he knows the routes that he needs to run to be able to convert. And that sort of footballing IQ is big for a receiver, especially a guy like him, because you see a lot who are just going up for the catches. They're not really taking in that sort of thing into account. And I really like that because he kept the chains moving for Penn State this year in a room that was really devoid of a lot of other receivers or talent there, with an all right quarterback, but nothing more than that. He still managed to shine in a very tough division this year. There's been some good sides. They're in the tough half of the Big Ten at the minute. So again, I like him as a receiver there. Yeah, not high on him as the other guys we've had there. It's probably around to pick in there. But if the value is there, I think he offers you a lot. So I think the team is going to be, again, incredibly happy with him. Just as I say, the initial versatility it gives you is a lot. And I think he's got a big brain about him, which is going to help him a lot at the next level. I would expect to see him succeed in time. Maybe not immediately like some of the other guys might, but get him in the right system, blood him in, and you will get long-term dividends off him.
I agree. Someone's going to get a good, solid player. I don't really want it to be us. I'm not that interested in him. Like I say, he's a mid to late second round guy. He's a jack of all trades, master of none, really. There's nothing he does fantastically well. And the lack of size and strength. So he's going to make it. He's not just what I'm looking for. I don't think he's what we're looking for either. Like I said, I think we've got 10 a penny of him. Let's see, we've got those well-rounded guys, those 5'11" to 6 foot guys. We've got a few of those now. So I think he would be in a very competitive room, but I don't think he's going to be able to stand out above everyone we've already got. So I think he'd get buried on the depth chart, like say year one, and then he'd have to slowly emerge in year two onwards.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about Johan Dotson, really, more than what you guys have said there. His consensus big board status per NFL mock draft database.com has him at 33, which I think is a bit rich, really. So I think he's overvalued in this class, especially given what you've said, but just what I've seen as well. I do think he has some big playability just because he is fast enough to do that. But that's pretty much all I can say on the positive side. Like you say, he just does everything well. And that's fine. That will get you a long way in this league, but I don't think it's what we're quite looking for. Alright, we'll move on to perhaps one of the more exciting players in this draft. A bit more variation where people think he might go. Rye has been having a look at Christian Watson out of North Dakota State, NDSU. What did you see from Christian Watson?
I've seen a lot of him over the years. Big FCS fan. North Dakota State, 6'4", 208 pounds, and he blew away the combine. A 998 elite score, elite across the board, 10.125 inch hands, a 436 40, which was a top 10 overall, an 11 feet 4 broad jump, and a vertical of 38.5. So he tested off the charts. He is an athletic freak. The numbers look a bit skewed because NDSU are a very run-heavy offense. 43 receptions for 800 yards and 7 touchdowns, but 15 carries for 114 yards and a rushing touchdown as well. So for a big, slender frame, you do put him at running back. He has got that elite speed. He's got top end. He's able to also mix it with the big boys. 3-year starter, 2-time FCS All-American, Team of the Year, and very successful in that time. Multiple national championship runs, won medals. Like I said, he's got a huge frame. Like I said, that's the first thing you see when you look at him. Built a bit like a stick of celery. Could do with a bit of weight on him, but he's got nice big hands. He's got a good catch radius. And he uses all that size as well because he's a good blocker. Like I said, they're a strong, use multiple backs in the SU. He's a very willing and capable blocker on the outside. He's said to take pride in his work, lots of effort in it, sustains blocks the line of scrimmage. Against little guys as well, he's able to swallow them up. Like I say, he's able to grab them but not hold them, but he can wrap them up, control their body, and let guys run behind him. Saw as well, like I say, he's at the combine, senior ball, tracks the ball really nicely. He knows where that ball is dropping over his shoulder and when it's going to stick his hands out into the breadbasket. He is a nice deep threat. Like he's able to get in behind defenders. He's able to work with the sideline. The sideline is where he does a lot of his best work. He uses his friend. He's pinned to it, and you're able to look downfield. He's able to get in behind defensive backs, and he is able to get large, big chunk players like that. A nice big stride because he's got long, slender legs. Looks a bit like a cross-country kind of track runner. He's able to cover ground fairly quickly, whether that's working inside or working out. So there's no more wasted movement. He doesn't waste a lot of energy. He takes minimal strides, and guys have to try and find their way to keep up with him. And he's fairly strong. Like I say, he's not bad on the contested catch for someone that's a bit slender, looks a bit skinny. He's got the frame to put weight on. But at that level, he has been pretty dominant. Teams have struggled to press him because he's great line of scrimmage. And if you give him a little bit of separation, well, he's shown that he's able to burn guys. Like I say, athletically, he's able to use that burst. And then once he gets the ball in his hands, foot race after the pylon. The one big issue, and it's been an issue all his career, is drops. He's had 16 catchable balls that he's lost concentration and dropped. And that is quite a lot. So say, I don't know what it is about it. He gets in behind guys, or he looks back for the ball, and he does that thing where he looks upfield before he gets the catch secured. It'll hit his fingers. You can't always fix drops with some guys, but I'm hoping he's one of those guys that with a lot of practice that you can drill down and his concentration go up. But they're the only real flaws. Like I say, he's got a slender frame and he does lose concentration. It's very visible when he drops a catchable ball. But other than that, I think he's certainly going to be in play at 32, 34. I think that is something that will get noticed, the drops. But I think he could be really good at the next level, even if he's not played against the highest level of competition. But we've seen that now that's been used against a lot of guys for a lot of teams. And it's kind of BS, really, because we've seen a lot of FCS guys come up to the next level now and hold their own. So I think that kind of people use it as a bit of an agenda. I think it's not fair, and I think he will prove doubters wrong again.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, I guess this time last year, I think it was Terrace Marshall who'd had the rocket ride from, of all rocket rides in terms of going up draft boards from sort of the postseason onwards, the combines and everything. Christian Watson's that guy this year. I mean, a few months ago, you'd have seen him in the third round, probably the lower third round of a lot of mock drafts. But, this offseason's just been incredible for him. His stock, wherever he's gone, just everything seems to have turned to gold. And, he's a potential first round pick now. And, I agree there again with Ryan's the one who's watched a lot more of him than me because he watches the FCS a bit more. But, don't take the lack of competition down there into account. He has all the athletic skills, the base technique skills you need to thrive in the NFL. And he just needs the right team to develop him. And the sky's the limit for him. I mean, he's such an intriguing prospect. And, for us, especially now we've got Chark here, someone in that mold, we could maybe take a go on a guy like him and develop him to be the outside guy who goes when Chark leaves. If Chark leaves, we could keep them both and would be really dangerous there. But yeah, he's had a hell of a rise, and rightly so. The drops are an issue, but it can be dealt with. Even Jamar Chase wasn't immune to that. He had so many drops and that at the start of the season. We just need a bit of confidence, need the right coaching, and you'll get there. So I'm looking forward to seeing who's going to take a punt on him and when, because he could potentially go very, very high, potentially well into the first round. I don't know. It's intriguing to see. But yeah, definitely the most intriguing prospect this year. And if we get him, I won't complain.
Yeah, I agree. I think, You're right, because he does show strong hands at times. It's those concentration drops, which, as I mentioned earlier, kind of frustrate me. But there's just so much kind of potential there. I think it was Alex from Pride of Detroit was talking about Christian Watson, and my hesitance with him is not even with the player. I really like him, and everything you hear about him is brilliant in terms of work ethic. At Senior Bowl, he was out of this world in the practices. So, like him as a player, there's been so much buzz that my concern, especially seeing how well the first round receivers did last year, I feel like if someone ends up taking him at the end of the first, start second, like I joke that people are going to expect a kind of second coming of Julio Jones or something like that. And it's like, let's just pump the brakes. He's a really tantalizing upside guy who may well hit the ground running, but it wouldn't surprise me if the team he goes to, actually, he doesn't get on the field like loads in his first year. And you still see some of those concentration drops and things which are actually frustrating. So it's almost just, I want fans to be patient with him more than anything, because like if he comes to the Lions, we've had Amon-Ra absolutely tear it up as a fourth rounder last year. I feel like the hype will be absolutely through the roof. And actually, this is a guy that you're not picking for his year one contribution, but has the potential to become top anything receiver basically in the NFL. There's no reason he couldn't become one of the best in the league. So yeah, really like him as a player. Just everyone should just pump the brakes a little bit in terms of expectations, I think, for year one.
A bit like Kelvin Benjamin, a lot of people hyped him up way too much, and he went higher in the draft than he should have done. And he had that size, he had that tantalizing, like I say, he had the odd concentration, but he turned out to be, well, a bit of a disaster. So I think anyone that takes him, like say, if you're thinking about 20 to 25, should probably hold off a little bit. I'd rather take him at 34 than 32. Even with the fifth year option, I'd rather just wait even those little 2 picks, see if he does scrape outside the first. Because like I say, there will be a very hot run of receivers where you'll see 4 or 5 going in the space of 10 picks.
I know it's hot take season, so I'll just go for that. But on tape and with the testing, I kind of with Tom really in terms of where his ceiling is. I think he can get there quicker than people think. And I don't want to overhype him because it might create unrealistic expectations he can't match. But you listen to him speak in interviews, the way that his mind works. I think he came out and said, I had offers from lower FBS teams, but if I was going to be at that level, I'd rather win titles at FCS level, which is why he went to North Dakota. So some people might say, okay, you're not testing yourself against best opposition, but the guy just wants to win. And I kind of like that. But he sounds like a super intelligent guy. Like, I think that he will take to NFL coaching really quickly. It's just a feeling. I have nothing else to base on. But the guy could, in the next 10 years, grow into the best receiver in the NFL. Like, because he just has people are projecting Malik Willis at quarterback to be one of those guys at the next level because in terms of traits, he has everything, right? Well, Watson is that a wide receiver. He has the size. He has, I think, enough weight. I'm not sure I'd want to put any weight on him, but he could put on a little bit more weight, as Ryan has said, and that would be fine. But he's got the speed. He's got the agility. He needs a little bit more concentration, but when he has got it, the hands are definitely there. Technically, he's very, very good. I've not seen anything from him that puts me off, like, pretty much at all. And I would trade up for him at 32. From 32 up to 26, 27. You know, only a few spots maybe, but it's purely for upside, and I'm not doing it for year one. And you know, if you do it, the fans would expect it. So it's kind of like giving him a poison chalice, really. But if I'm the GM, I don't care what the fans think. I just don't. I want the best thing for the team. And I think most teams in year 2 and beyond are going to think, oh my God, I can't believe this guy didn't go higher. It's just where he could be. And if it doesn't work out, no one's going to turn around and say, well, no one saw on tape that this guy couldn't have been that. Like, I don't think you're going to get the hiding that you might get from perhaps, say, if you took Johan Dotson at 32 or Watson at 26, I think people would say that Watson is probably more value there. So Yeah, he's going to polarize a lot of people because of the competition he's played against. But I love this man very, very much. And I think there are a lot of universities that this guy is at least the best receiver in this draft when it comes to the end of the rookie contracts. All right. That's my hot take.
We'll keep that one on record.
Bank it.
They're all on record, and you guys are all going to have access to the database of all of our live recordings now to do with what you wish. So, hot take season is going to be in session, I'm sure, in the next few years. Right, next guy, Ant, is one of yours, and someone who's been much maligned after the draft, but I know is one of your favourites out of Purdue, David Bell.
Yeah, I specifically asked for this guy because I think the level of disrespect he's gotten from the combine and from the offseason in general is just way overblown. I think people are really talking themselves out of him when they shouldn't be, and I just don't like to see that to happen to a player. You know, I'm not big on the combine and the results that happen there. I more look at a player's college career to see a basis of where he might be able to go. So yeah, David Bell, the wide receiver from Purdue, he has been there 3 years. He is 6'2", 205 pounds. His career, he's got 232 receptions for 2,946 receiving yards. He's had 2 1,000-yard seasons. The third was the cut short COVID year. Played 6 games, got 625 yards and 8 touchdowns in 6 games. So probably would have got another 1,000-yard season if they'd have gone on there. Got 21 touchdowns overall. He's got a rushing touchdown as well to his name. Averages about 12.7 yards per catch. So unlike with some of the other guys who are up at 17, 18, not the biggest deep threat in the world here, but that doesn't really hold against him. It's 2021. He had 93 receptions, 1,286 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Now, for this one, I went and deep dived on him a little. I went back into his past to see his progression through college, through high school, and this is why I like to go to this sort of stuff rather than do on things about a combine. You find out about the personality of a player, you find out about his mentality, his willingness to win. So he went to high school at a place called Warren, where he was at. It was an underachieving school when he went there in terms of sports. He left. He was one of the best players they had had. He went 2.5 sports seasons there without losing a game. He played a full season of football. They didn't lose a game. He played a full season of basketball. They didn't lose a game. Played over a further half a season football. Didn't lose a game. This is a guy who has the winning mentality and did, along with some others there, but he did really change around the fortunes of what was happening there. Just every year he kept getting better, and he left with all honors. They won state title, which they'd not won in a long time. And then he made the transfer up to Purdue for his college career. His first year as a freshman, he got over 1,000 yards that year. He got 8 touchdowns. He appeared in all 12 games. He started 9 of them, which for a freshman is an awful lot. He got the Big Ten Freshman of the Year award. So out of everybody, he topped them all. He was an All-American, thanks to the Associated Press. And he got an honorable mention in the All-Big Ten team there as well. His sophomore year, as I've just mentioned, he was averaging over 100 yards per game. It was a short COVID year, just 6 games, over 600 yards. So he got the 8 touchdowns as well. He was an academic All-Big Ten. He was a first-team All-Big Ten guy. There's a lot of competition in these divisions. There's a lot of good guys in there, and he's consistently been getting honors there. And then his junior year has been the pièce de résistance for him. He's had 2 200-yard games. He's had a further 5 100-yard games. Only Wisconsin and Notre Dame kept him below 70 receiving yards this year. And as we know, one of our favorite defenders plays at Notre Dame. It's a very good defense, as is Wisconsin's. That's the level he has been playing at. This is a guy who, since high school, has got a winning mentality. He has been getting better and better and better, and he's just on an upward curve. In terms of the guy himself, he's a route running technician. He's maybe the best route runner out of all these guys in class. And the reason is Purdue have manufactured a ton of touches to get him involved in the game. Now, I said earlier with Burks, this was a detrimental thing, but because they use his size and his mismatched speed, the same way, just because it works all the time. With Bell, they've had to take a different route. They've had to really expand his route tree. They've had to get really creative to get him in the game and keep him in there. So on the tapes, you will see him doing pretty much everything. You will see stick routes, slants, screens, digs, posts, deep outs, double moves. You will see just about everything to get him involved in this game. The technical prowess is second to none. He needs to be able to deal with all the added, support the defense is giving when they're covering him. And, this translates over to his release packages. So off the line of scrimmage, again, he's got to be very clever to be able to get himself in space. He's not relying on burner speed to be able to create that separation. So he has to get really clever with it. Like I say, he's got a lot of different release packages, a lot of different fakes. He's got a good shuttle move he uses just to sort of fake guys out. His hand usage is really good to beat corners when they're up against him with press. I just really like everything about the technical aspect of his game. When it comes to the catching, his hand usage is really good. The dropping is minimal. It's not a problem there at all. He adjusts really well to bad throws. I mean, Aiden O'Connell, the quarterback there, has gotten a lot better, especially this year, and they've really forged a hell of a connection between them. They were one of the most encouraging pairs really to watch during the college season. I enjoyed watching them there, and the biggest thing is he's not afraid of contact. He will go into the contested catch situations. He's a willing blocker who puts a lot of effort into doing that. He's not afraid of contact at all, and like I say, he's a real big willing blocker for his teammates. The only red flag put against him is about his athleticism and why people have really been going off on him about the combine. He's not dominant athletically like some of these other receivers are, and he doesn't have the mismatch pace to really be, to be like cutting guys up with speed at the next level. He ran a 4.62.40 at the combine. During drills, he did look a bit shaky in some of them, etc. But overall, it wasn't too bad to warrant the sheer amount of hate he's got from this. I've seen people saying he's going to drop down to the third round and that's where he should be. It's absolutely rubbish. The thing is, he might not have this dominant athletic profile about him, but it's never been his calling card, and he's always been successful without it. The technical aspects of his game means that you don't need the elite speed to beat guys. You can beat them through a majority of other means. He's an incredibly competitive player, as he puts everything into the game. He's just got a history of getting better and better and better. He's got a high floor, he's got a high ceiling, and at the next level, someone is going to get an absolute gem of a find with him there. And if he slips down in the second or in the third, I won't know what to say about it, because he doesn't deserve it at all. I think the comp I've got for him in the league at the minute is maybe ambitious, but I think he's a Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin's not going to kill you with outright speed, but he's got the technical prowess on his route running where he's really dangerous in games, and he's got that physicality to him as well. And he's had a pretty decent career in the league so far. So, yeah, I don't understand the hate towards him. I think he's going to be a really good player in his own right, and he doesn't deserve to drop because of one combine showing.
Well, yeah, Ant knows I'm a big fan as well. Just go back, anyone that wants to watch the Iowa game, watch how one of the best secondaries in the nation was dismantled. Like say, he works out the slot, he'll run you a jet sweep, he'll run a reverse, they won't manufacture any touches for him. He runs at one of the best and nicest wheel routes I've ever seen. He turns the corner incredibly well. He's not the fastest straight line, but he's a very savvy, crisp route runner. I agree, he's one of the best route runners. He's got one of the best route trees. He's very well polished. He reminds me of Rashad Bateman coming out last year, who's not the fastest. Like I say, he isn't that straight line speed, but he's very technical. Like I say, plays a similar style to Minnesota. He's got the good 6'2" frame, so he ain't scared to get physical, but he was the focal point for Aiden O'Connell. Like I said, they were great. Purdue had a really good year, and everything they did well, he was pretty much involved in. If it wasn't for blocking for Harbaugh, one of the fullbacks, like I say, he was able to then take games on his shoulders. He was dicing teams. Everyone knew the ball was going to him, but you couldn't stop him. Like I say, if you know a team is just looking to throw to one or two guys all the field all the time, and you still can't stop him, whether you press him or you sit someone up him deep, that tells you that a player knows he's good, he trusts his instincts, and that he has got that ability to generate separation and give his quarterback a safety blanket, because he was Aidan O'Connell's safety blanket. He knew he could get open, and he knew that he could look for him as soon as the ball was snapped. So I think he's going to go in the second round, but I think he's going to be really good value for that. And he's someone that could be a solid 600-700 yard receiver in his first year, which I think would be a really good output. And then he's got a chance to grow on that.
He's not dissimilar from Quintez Cephas, who obviously tested pretty poorly as well. Cephas ran quite a lot slower. I think he was in the 4.7s, but similar kind of thing. He doesn't win with his athleticism. Now, I'm probably slightly lower on him. I was before the combine, but by slightly lower, I mean, I just would prefer the guys that we've talked about already. So if we're thinking Lions, I would be uncomfortable taking him 32, 34 personally, assuming that some of these other guys are on the board. But I would have no issues with taking him at 66, and I think he'll be a good pro.
I think the most important thing to note about his combine is that his 10 split was 156, which is about 8 on the scale. So you might malign him for being unathletic, but off the line, his acceleration is really good, actually. He just hasn't had that top end speed. And his weight's also good. You know, height and weight, he's a guy who can be physical. So his route running is great, his acceleration is great, and his height and weight are great. So you put that all together, that's why he's been successful. And that hasn't changed with the combine. Okay, the guy isn't going to outsprint you if you're on your own goal line and he catches a slant. Like, he's not probably taking it to the house. He probably has beaten you off the snap. And that's kind of what's important with this guy. So I see him going... I can see the Lions going defense on all 3 top picks and taking Bell at 66. And I think he will be available. I think he will fall to the top of the 3rd. And I think the Lions will really consider taking him. So it's going to be an interesting one. I think that people have hated on him, as Ant said, far too much for a combine, which was fine. It just wasn't great. And you'd hope for more, but I think he did fine where it mattered. I mean, the 3 cone was 714, which is not disaster territory. And the explosion is okay. But height, weight, 10-yard split, good. That's fine by me. All right. We'll move on to guy number 9, which is Sky Moore, one of mine from Western Michigan. And I will start this off by saying it is hard to get Western Michigan tape. Oh my god. Right, okay. Western Michigan, WMU, played the number 24. He's a red shirt sophomore coming out. So 21 years old, born in September, so he will be 22 as the season starts. He is 5'9.5", 195 pounds, had 30 games, 171 receptions, 2,482 yards, which is 14.5 yards per catch, 16 touchdowns, and then 3 rushing attempts for 12 yards and a touchdown. In terms of RAS, 7.5, with elite speed grades, a 1.46 10-yard split, which, if I recall, was the fastest of the wide receivers testing, 4.41 40-yard dash. He also had a really good broad jump of 10.05, but not the strongest with only 15 reps on the bench. Not the best vert, well, okay, fine. Small, I just said that. Not the best shuttle and 3 cone, which surprised me because on tape I do really think that he's good at that, actually. I think he is agile. He is one of the top wide receivers on PFF's board. I haven't actually looked at what his grade was last year, but I know that he's regarded as someone at the bottom of the 1st, top of the 2nd range by them, although regarded as someone who's perhaps 2nd or 3rd round territory with the rest of everyone else. Watched a couple of games of his, first off against Pitt in 2021 and then Northern Illinois also in 2021. At his size, he is incredibly well built. So I said he's 195 pounds. He's 5'9". Like, he is the prototypical running back build, and I actually think he could have been used a hell of a lot more as a running back. I think that he shows the ability to oh god, every single week I come into this and I try and think of bloody names of people, and I can never remember who they are. San Francisco wide receiver who also is now more versatile out of the running back position.
Debo.
Debo spoke to me as a comp. Like, super fast, built in that sort of way, really nice agileness, athleticism, juke moves, physical as a blocker, sharp and sudden. His route running is fantastic. Predominantly a slot when he lines up as a wide receiver, but he did have the odd rep here and X and Z. He's not super quick. Like, say about his RAS, it's not like it's a 4.41. It's not like it's a 4.25 at his size, but it's fast enough, and especially with a 1.46 in the 10-yard split, he's beating you off the snap more often than not. So people are going to have to give him a little bit of a cushion. When he's in the red zone, I think he perhaps disappears a little bit, which is not surprising given his height. Press man doesn't seem to give him a problem, which I think, given that he's 5'9", might surprise some people, but I do think it's just a function of his weight and the fact that he's got a low center of gravity. He manages to outmuscle people who are much bigger than he is, which is really, really impressive. Given his lack of size, he's got a really big catch radius, so he kind of catches like a 6-foot guy at 5'9". Intelligence is really good, recognizes coverages, tailors his routes to beat the coverage, and just hopes that the quarterback recognizes perhaps he's not going to be quite in the spot that he imagined he would be, but he's created a few yards of separation by doing so. Sudden, so his deceleration on his curl routes are really good. His toughness to stay on his feet during contact is exceptional. So one of the reasons why I think that he'd actually do really well at running back is that I saw a few reps where I thought, this guy's Javonte Williams from last year coming out. Like, he gets hit hard and he doesn't go down. Like, I think his broken tackle rate would be massive if he'd had the touches from that position. So I'd love to see him expand out as a slot and running back type receiver. His lateral movement is better than his top end speed. So even though he runs a 4.41, he's really, really quick from side to side. And, that's why I was surprised his agility grades was so poor at the combine. He's efficient with his legs, with his steps. So you won't see many false steps from him. And, he needs that because to win at 5'9", your strides aren't the longest. You need to be efficient with every step, and he is. So this is someone who I can see with his size that people are going to be down on this guy because if you're going to play him as wide receiver, you've got to pencil him as a slot. I don't think he's going to succeed on the outside in the NFL. But maybe as a gadget back on the outside where you scheme him receptions maybe behind the line, kind of like Debo was maligned as a couple of... Debo Samuel last year, coming into the season, it was like, he's just not that good because he catches the ball behind the line on average. Like, he had minus yards in terms of where he was catching the ball. And then he didn't do anything with it. And then this season just kind of exploded onto the scene. I can see that sort of profile coming from Sky Moore. But I'd love to see him at running back, and I'd love to see like half his reps coming there because I just think he could be so successful at doing that. So, I mean, the Northern Illinois game I picked because it was meant to be his best on tape, and he got 12 yards for 206 yards and 4 touchdowns and gave him such problems. It was so impressive. I don't know if you guys have managed to see much of Sky Moore because he's kind of been a late riser in this draft process, and as I said, Western Michigan kind of hard to get tape on unless you're watching them live, which is not the easiest from over here. But what have you seen from him, if any?
Really like his quarterback. I do. Caleb Ellaby should be under consideration by the Lions in this draft. Absolutely. But no, Moore himself, I agree a lot there. I wouldn't throw around the Debo comparison very lightly, because if you start using that word, people will start wanting to spend a first round draft pick on him.
But
because everybody wants the Debo.
But the thing about Debo is everyone forgets that last year, all the chat with the San Francisco guys was, I'm not sure he's the one because he's not producing. Like, it's only this season that he's absolutely gone mad with it.
True. I don't know. I think there's been a lot of stuff on him to start with, but no, I agree. There's a lot to like about him. Again, he's shown out on a team which is, not got the most NFL talent on there. And in fairness, Michigan sides have done really well this year, but yeah, I'm intrigued. But I don't really know enough about to say whether I'd draft him or not. But I do know I'd draft his quarterback.
I think he could be an elite returner. Like I say, he's definitely got that low center of gravity, and he's got good balance, which, I mean, for kickoffs and punts, like I say, that could make him a kind of like a Jamal Agnew. Like I say, who offers that versatility, is a bit of a scat gadget back. He took a lot of screens, didn't he, and slants. The route tree is not the most expanded, but I agree that if you're able to manufacture toucherism, like I say, put him at running back a bit like, he's built a bit like Jordan Howard, isn't he? Like say that 5'9", that little stocky that's quite hard to stop. So I think for a team that does need a scat back kind of guy like him, you can probably find a role for him in your offense. Whereas where does he go? Well, it's kind of impossible really to say. Like, someone's going to fall in love with him. Like, does someone take him in the second round? Does he fall to the fourth because he's a bit of a project gadget? Like I say, it's impossible to say. I couldn't really pigeonhole him anywhere, but I agree he's got that likeness, he's got the toughness as well, and he plays a bit bigger than he's built. So he's certainly one to watch, and I think he could be someone that goes under the radar. It could get picked up by a side that could use him really well.
I'll be honest, all I've seen of him is Twitter videos. I've actually studied no film of his, and obviously that's great. You get to see nice highlights, and looks like an exciting guy. I think is at PFF are really high on him, and I know a couple of analysts are, but I can't really add more to it, to be honest. I think you've done a great job.
All right, we'll move on to the next one, Tom, which is one of yours, from Georgia, being injured, I think, in 2021, but George Pickens.
Great. I haven't shut my notes this time, so I won't have to awkwardly fill for 30 seconds. George Pickens, 6'3" and a bit, 195 pounds. He has a RAS score of 9.33. So obviously on the elite end there, 4.47 40, explosive on the broad jump, great 10-yard split. So really nice athlete. He only had 5 receptions in 2021, coming back from an ACL tear, I believe, in the spring. But he had an 85.5 PFF grade as a freshman. So a guy that's really been producing when on the field ever since he first stepped on the field. So strength-wise, he was a number 1 receiver as a freshman at Georgia. Not the easiest thing to do. So really impressive for a guy to just step on the field and produce like that. For me, he has the best ball skills in this draft. Really, really impressive in a variety of ways too. So I saw 3 or 4 times, just even in the games I was watching and some of the highlights from the national title, deep balls where he would be running at full speed and he would stretch out and go get it. It's hyper impressive. As a competitor, he wants all the smoke, which I'm so here for. His physicality can't always match it because obviously he's quite a light guy, but he wants a piece of everyone, which we'll come to. There's a downside to that too. Quick feet and sudden out of his breaks, which is impressive. Such a high cut guy. Makes highlight reel grabs, as I mentioned. Really nice use of double moves down the field to get separation. As I mentioned, impressive in contested catch situations as well. There was a play. He's very dangerous in the red zone, really. And I think if you watch highlights, for example, of his, a lot of them are in and around the red zone. He does a lot of damage there. There was a play against Derek Stingley, who obviously injuries may push him down, but otherwise probably would have been a top 5 or 10 pick if he isn't already. He just gasses him on a slant in the red zone. Stingley gets lazy with his eyes and it's over for 6. So yeah, impressive guy. Weaknesses, there are some character concerns to dig into. So he was suspended for violating team rules. He was kicked out of a game for fighting. So yes, he wants to get after it, but sometimes to the detriment of his team and his teammates. So definitely something to check in on. He's got less than ideal bulk. So frame wise, he's almost more AJ Green. Green was heavier and a bit bigger, but he's that kind of lanky 6'3" rather than someone who's filled out. And this shows up in that he's not always able to get out from physical guys, physical corners. So ACL injuries we touched on, many missed most of last season, did look close to full fitness by the national title game. Again, I'm not hugely concerned, especially having seen him on the field since. And like a few guys we talked about today, he does have some concentration drops. He's almost thinking about getting upfield before he's pulled it in. So overall, I like him a lot. I think he's a fun guy to watch. My question is, do we already have him on the roster? I see a lot of DJ Chark in his game in terms of Chark probably has a bit more juice. Pickens better hands, but that kind of lean, quick 6'3" build, I see a lot of similarities in terms of play style. Combining that with a few off-field questions, obviously the injury as well. There's just, for me, too many questions. Again, if we're talking about that 32, 34 sweet spot, a lot of the guys we talked about today, I would much rather take. If he does end up falling something like 66, again, for me, run the card in. I think if we do end up taking a receiver at 66, I will be happy in the hope that it's one of these guys that have fallen. So I'd be very happy gambling at that point. I just personally I won't be upset about us taking him 32, 34, but I wouldn't over some of the guys we've talked about. So yeah, that's it. It's so good that Ryan has left. For those of you listening, Ryan has walked off. He's disgusted by that.
No, I think you've done a very good job summarising it up there. I mean, he doesn't have the versatility that some of the other guys we've said does. He is an outside guy only. He's not someone you're going to come in and play off the slot. And as you say, there are issues when it comes to blocking the frame. While the willingness is there, the frame doesn't necessarily follow suit with it. And obviously schematically from us, that's sort of the thing we really do look for. But I think a guy like Dan Campbell would be enamored with, let's say, the competitive toughness he shows. They would absolutely love that. I mean, the fact that Georgia was so good last year without him is just ridiculous as to how much talent they've got. But I like him as a receiver. It's a shame his season got banjacked by injury. It really is a shame, but there is a lot to like there about him. The red marks on there are stuff that we would take to heart, I think, a bit too much. So I just don't think it would be schematically a fit for us. But like you say, if he drops, then the value you're going to get is so much that you couldn't pass him up, but it would be 66 first and foremost. And I don't think he gets there. I think if he lands in the right system, then he's going to be absolutely fine. But he's not what we need per se, I don't think.
I have nothing to add on George Pickens, which is partly why I left at the start of that piece. Apologies. But no, I don't know if Ryan has any thoughts on Pickens that he wants to add.
I like him. Yeah. I think of all the guys that have had an injury concern, he's the one that... I think of all the guys that have had an injury concern, he worries me the least. And it's based off, like I say, we've seen more of him this year. Like you say, he's been through an injury, he's had the rehab, and he's played well. Like I say, he was very effective at times. I agree in the chart, AJ Green, will he have injuries with in future? Because he's got that slender frame that seems a bit almost fragile at times. I'd like him to work on it a bit, but I've seen him up to Lions. I think I've seen him somewhere like 32, 34. I think at the start of that second round is probably the prime area for him. And if we did trade back from one of those slots, a few picks, I'd be happy to snap him up. Like I say, he could be the next heir to DJ Chark, but he's got that fire in him that I like. I don't mind the odd suspension getting thrown out. I think actually the firiness is what our front office might be drawn to. So I think he's a good prospect as well. I think he's one of those 4th, 5th guys maybe off the board at receiver.
All right, we'll move on to our penultimate guy, which is one of Ryan's actually out of Alabama, also injured coming into the end of this season, but perhaps one of the technically best receivers who's fallen a little bit because of that injury. But John Mechie III, Ryan, what have you seen from him?
6 foot, well, 6 foot-ish, 190 pounds. Let's say the torn ACL. So we're not going to see him work out. There won't be any workout before that. Spent 3-4 years, 2 very good years. 2020, 55 receptions, 916 yards, 6 touchdowns. 2021, before he went down, unfortunately, he was having a fantastic year. 96 receptions, 1,142 yards and 8 touchdowns. He looks really good, like I say. Him going down with injury was heartbreaking to see, because he was having such a strong year and he was having a good game. And I think he's someone that lived the big moments, like I say, comes alive against the best teams. He's got I'll say he does generate yak. He has got that opportunity. If you put him on, I like him in slants, I like him in crosses, like where he gets to pass through zones and he has to make guys change, flip hips and try to travel him across the field. I've seen him burn people moving from left to right. So he's got lateral speed in spades, very few wasted steps, good stride. That's where he gets most separation. And then he turns the corner, moves upfield when he's able to slip through those zones. So he's explosive in that sense. The frame is not big, and I think the arms are a bit short, so the radius is not quite there. He needs the catches to kind of be on the money in that short range. And I've seen him drift sometimes, so he'll sometimes cut across or a short route very suddenly, or he will drift a bit deeper if he's on like a slant, and that has caused miscommunications. There are balls that go in where they think he's going to be or where he should be, and he's a little bit deeper, a little bit shallower. So sometimes the timing of his routes isn't always the best, but technically the turns, the cuts, the stamps when he breaks and then quickly comes back, I think all that he can do that on a dime. So I think as a primary slot guy that maybe has a future working on the outside because of not the huge catch radius, he's not good in contested. I'm not going to put 50-50 deep balls and ask him to go get them against strong, big, physical defensive backs who he may struggle against. But keep him in open field, give him separate, give him those nice quick outs, those cheap balls, get the ball in his hands. He will do all his best work once the ball's in his hands and he's able to see green grass. He will make people miss. He is slippery. You need to get 2 hands on him and wrap him up. But I'm devastated to see him with injury. But my hot take is I think someone will overlook the slender frame and the torn ACL. He could go at the end of the first. I think someone could really reach for John Metchie. I think someone will love him. I don't want it to be us, but I think once he is rehabbed and everything, I think he could be that kind of Waddle. He could have a big impact in an offense in year 2 or the end of the first year. I think he could be an explosive start at the next level.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything Ryan said there, pretty much even towards our strategy with him. I don't really want to go near him, given the injury history, given the frame. I just don't think he's right for us. But I also agree with him that someone could potentially really, really fall in love with him, because before he got injured, he was the darling at Alabama. No one was talking about Jameson Williams till Metchie got injured. So that just shows how big he was there. And look where Williams is predicted now, even with his own torn ACL, he's predicted in the first. I don't see no reason why Metchie probably couldn't do the same if people are going to go off, their analysis of him. Because like I say, he was the main guy there before he got injured.
My worry with him, again, he's another guy I would love to see him test. He's almost, it's not just because of the dreads, but you combine like the size and a little bit of how he plays. It's not dissimilar from someone like Jalen Waddle, but just so far removed from the explosiveness that you get obviously with Waddle. So for me, he's a slightly later guy. I think he can be a really nice kind of, if he kicks on, he can be a nice receiver, like wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, probably more likely a 3. But again, I think he'll be a good player. I want a bit more upside.
I think at the end of the day, it's someone that is not providing value at 34 and is providing immense value at 66. And he's somewhere in between there. It's the injury throwing the spanner in the works again, isn't it? Because in terms of how he runs his routes, I know Ryan says sometimes he can run them a bit too deep or a bit too shallow, but I think the majority of the time what I've seen from him is exceptional, and that's the reason why he's creating separation in spades. The guy is on his own so often in the deep end of the backfield, of the opposition's secondary. Like, he's just got 10 yards, and it's like, how the hell has that happened? It's really, really hard to see where he's going to go. Ryan's absolutely right. At late end of the first round, like, I can absolutely see someone like Green Bay picking him. They've got those 2 picks at the end of that first round. I can see the Chiefs taking him. I think that'd be a good fit too, actually. But equally, if he went middle of the third, it wouldn't surprise me. So it's one of those. But I think if you do get him a bit later on, he is going to be huge still. I think his route running ability is going to eclipse everything else that people think about him. So I am bullish on his prospects in the NFL. All right, we'll move on to our final guy. Ant is going to round it off with South Alabama's Jalen Tolbert. What have you seen from him?
Yeah, sorry, you left my guy to last, who I did 2.5 pages worth of notes on, so I'll try and trim it down because we've been going a long time.
We're all right.
Already.
We're all right for time.
Jalen Tolbert, for me, is another one who's been looked at unfavorably recently. He's another who was potentially at the top of round 2 chatter. Now people are starting to say round 3. They're starting to say there's issues there. And again, I wanted to go and look back at him and see if there's any justification for this, because this is, again, sort of due to combine testing and little bits like that, etc. So yeah, Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver from South Alabama. He's been there 4 years. He's 6'3". He's 190 pounds over his career. He's got 178 receptions, 3,140 receiving yards, 17.6 yards per catch. So this guy is a deep threat, and some 22 touchdowns. He's had 2 1,000-yard seasons as well. They've come most recently in 2020, 2021. Did miss time with an injury in his freshman year, but had nothing really there since then. So for those who don't know South Alabama, they play in the Sun Belt, probably one of the weakest conferences, maybe the weakest in the FBS. So the quality down there isn't necessarily as good as around some of the rest of college football. And, you know, when good players do come up there, they will take large percentage shares on their team. They become focal points very quickly. So over this year, he has had a 48% share of their receptions. He has accounted for 33.4% of all their offensive points scored this year, and he's got 36.6% of all their total touchdowns. This guy has a lot of usage for South Alabama. He had a yak average of 7.1, so that's 7.1 yards after the catch. That would have ranked 6th out of all wide receivers in the 2021 draft. The data wasn't available for this year, but that's just to show he is a yards after catch threat there. Primarily plays on the outside. He took 66% of his snaps out there and 34% in the slot. So you've got versatility there as well. He can play both inside and out. I nicknamed him for this. I nicknamed him Big Play J. He has the big play ability. It's exceptional there. He possesses the long speed to get on top of defenders. Initially, the burst off the line isn't the greatest, but he soon does get up to speed and possesses a top speed that will trouble a lot of corners, a lot of safeties. Ball tracking is phenomenal. Maybe one of the best ball trackers in this draft when it comes to the receivers. He's always putting himself in the best position to make a play, whether he's hauling it in with both hands. He makes a lot of one-handed catches. There's one against, I can't remember, maybe Georgia Southern or something. He does this really incredible one-handed, like, hook hand grab over his head, which is just absolutely amazing. But he knows where the ball is, and if it's coming up short as well, he's able to sell it to a corner to send him in the other direction. And he sets himself really well when it comes to contested catches. He's very rarely in a position where he will be, have damage caused to him. He just seems to know where to put himself, how to keep himself out of harm's way, and most importantly, he will drag in the ball. His toughness shows up in this ability. Like I say, the contested catch ability with him is really good. He's not afraid to put himself in with the biggest and toughest when it comes to defensive backs and be able to win off them. You know, he plays multiple positions across the line as well. He needs to know the skill set that goes with all those positions. So the football IQ is there as well. Obviously, playing slot and playing outside, two very different aspects of the game, and a lot that you need to know there. The release packages, they're very varied. He's got really quick feet that he can use to gain a first step on zone defenders, and he's also got the strength to win against press coverage. Like I say, he's quite a strong guy in there as well. So overall, there's a lot there to like about his game and what you get with him. The issues, so the concentration is an issue. He had 7 drops in 2021, but as we've said with some of the other guys earlier, their concentration issues. It's nothing to do with his hands. He's got a good set of hands on him. He's really good at catching the ball. It's just expected contact he sometimes has an issue with. This turns up a lot on screen passes. So the pass will be coming across and he's looking at the defensive back who's coming at him, and he takes his mind off the ball and he drops them. That's really sort of a coachable issue there. It's nothing to do with how he catches it. It's nothing to do with his receiving ability and that there. So that can be coached. His route running, he is an effective route runner, but the ability to sort of rattle defenders when he's doing his double moves and that, he doesn't sell them very well. So that does mean he can have issues on his routes. He really needs to polish up what he's doing with those. But again, it's sort of attention to detail things. Sometimes he doesn't, I hate to use the word lazy, but because he's on a team where he gets so much production and so much usage, he doesn't have to fight as hard for the looks from the quarterback to get the passes. So I think sometimes he does get a bit lazy when it comes to it. But again, it's nothing majorly red flaggish there. When he's coming up to an NFL team, he's going to have to work his arse off to get a look. So I think that's something that you can coach out of him again. And then obviously the major one's the competition. He's, you know, both with the team and the conference. Like I say, the Sun Belt's one of the weaker conferences, so the quality is going to go up vastly for him when he reaches the NFL, and he's going to have to adjust to that. And then individually as well, like I say, when you take up such a team share, when it comes, you know, to your stats and that, it's very easy for you to lapse into some bad habits, etc., etc. He's gonna have to deal with that when he moves up to the next level. That's going to be his biggest challenge. He's going to have to do a lot more, or he's going to have to do similar sort of production on less plays. And is he going to be able to do that? Because obviously, when you get so many looks in college, you can make a mistake, you can shake it off, you can go back in, you'll still get your looks. You won't get that at the NFL level. So, can he do it? I believe he can. I think there's just certain coaching issues when it comes to a little bit of his technique, when it comes to the concentration. But overall, as an outside threat, a guy who is going to really make life difficult for corners, for safeties, I really like him. And he's in my top 3 of realistic draft prospects for wide receivers for the Lions. I mean, realistic to draft. I'm not going to put him in with Drake London and Trey Lombergs and all that, because I think it's a bit unrealistic. But I want a big outside receiving threat to go with DJ Chark. And for me, he fits the bill. And people, again, I don't know whether they're off writing him just because he had a little bit of a bad combine, because he plays in the Sun Belt. It doesn't affect Christian Watson, because he plays in the FCS. But I really like what I see from him. I think it's just a case of polishing him up, and he's going to be a really good outside receiving threat. And if he's there at 66, you really, really have to seriously consider taking him. Apparently, you can get him later as well, and I don't think that's warranted in his case. But again, another guy I really like.
But you touched on it really nicely there in terms of he's a really well-rounded player. He has athleticism. The hate's a bit weird, I guess. I don't know what he's done that much to get so many people to turn off him. I'm not super high on him, but I don't really know what he's done wrong that much. The question mark which you raise about level of competition and things like that, for me, that showed up a little bit the Senior Bowl. Like I went into the Senior Bowl really excited to watch him, and I thought he was fine. But one of those times where he's facing better guys, he didn't show up in quite the same way. So I think, and I haven't done anywhere near a deep dive like you have. So that would be my biggest worry about how it's going to translate to the NFL, especially in those first couple of years when he's an older guy. But if it does, someone's going to get a steal.
I agree. He was a huge focal point. I know South Alabama, they had a journeyman quarterback, Jake Bentley, who feels about 40, who's a gunslinger. Like I say, he's been around the block. So he needed someone he could rely on, being a new quarterback that's dropped down to the ranks. So he got a big chunk of the pie. So his numbers did look good. In a more balanced offense, will his numbers go down, or will he step up, and when there's other people taking away protection, he could possibly flourish? It's hard to really say. I agree that across 40 yards, he doesn't look the best, but moves a bit like an oil tanker, like through 50, 60, 70 yards when he's got through those first 4 or 5 gears. He might look a little bit better on tape. The combine wasn't really that fair to him. It does take a while to get up to top speed, which some guys do. I think what Ant said is realistic, and that's a key word here. There are guys out there that we've named that we can have no chance at. But like I say, we're going to have a real shot at taking him as a potential heir to an outside guy at, say, 66 around the end of the second, early third. He's going to be someone that's readily available to us. I think he's got some of those traits you look for. Like I say, he's good, solid outside option. He's got good size. He's got decent long-range speed, even if it's not a hard burst off the line. So he will be someone that will have to step up the competition and will have to work a little bit harder if he can't get all the separation he's used to. But there's certainly that. Like I said, I think they'll have got good luck him at the Senior Bowl. I think they'll have known him well and spoken to him. So I think he's someone that could find himself a role, carve out that niche at the next level. It's just, you don't want to take him too high, because the ceiling may not be too high, but the floor seems fairly safe with him as a kind of 2-3 guy.
I have nothing more to add, so I'll just say that right now. I've seen a little bit of highlights from him, but nothing more than what you guys have talked about all around. So seems like a guy who would be good value at the top of the third, and we'll see where we go from there. Anything more to add from any of these guys, or any of the guys lower than this? I know there's some significant guys that we've perhaps missed. Romeo Dubs, Wandale Robinson, that sort of thing. So anything anyone else wants to talk about?
It's a bloody deep class this year. Maybe not top 10 talent like last year's had, but the middle rounds, they're going to be a lot of steals in there for people. I think there's just a wide range of everything from Calvin Austin, who's in your Tyree Gill mold. You've got these big outside wide receivers there, slot guys. There's value to be had. If you've not taken a wide receiver by 66, don't be worried. There'll be plenty like Amon-Ra last year who coached well. They're going to be studs. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing who we go for.
I think someone will get a steal in Khalil Shakir, a player I know well. Plays wide receiver. He can play defensive back. Like I say, he knows how wide receivers, corners play. Could be an elite returner as well, and will be used all over the field. So he's someone that is going to be really exciting. And I think he will take his big player level up to the next level. So watch him out of Boise State, because he's been someone that's been really key for the Broncos over the years and has that knack for just being able to break up in a player and make something happen.
Two quick guys. Alec Pierce, we didn't talk about, but another athletic, big receiver who I think will go somewhere probably later on day 2 as well. Like him. And then this is based only off combine, as in I've never seen this guy actually take a snap, but I was watching combine reps, not speed, not drills, as in the actual wide receiver drills. Braylon Sanders, really nice, quiet hands. So,
Nice.
Yeah, Ole Miss guy, I loved it. Loved him at the combine. Thought he moved really nicely. So I haven't seen a single snap of him on a football field other than in Indy, but that's going to be my dark horse, which I can live and die by.
I thought you were about to say Thornton then, just for his 40. No, don't you dare. No,
Yeah, so-
not receivers with the fast 40s.
No, so Tyquan Thornton ran, what, a 4.26? Was it?
Less than that, I think.
Yeah.
4.24 or something. Bloody
Unbelievable.
quick.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
I'd
but-
never heard of him either, and I've actually watched Baylor a few times this year as well. They've got a lot of good defensive guys, and I still didn't know about him.
Absolutely
If
fine.
anyone wants,
Sorry.
if anyone wants a receiver that can do everything, Eric Izukanma. Remember that name out of Texas Tech.
Oh,
He will be someone that you get called on Sundays. Plays running back, receiver. He's big. He's strong. He played in a really crappy team, but he was a star, and he will be making plays on Sundays. In the third, fourth round, I would gobble him up.
And I would love it just so Ryan Farden has to pronounce his name on the podcast.
Oh, that's going to be fun. Right, we're going to wrap it up there. So next week, Monday, April 4th, is the final positional breakdown show of the cycle. It is the quarterbacks prospects show. I'm going to try and work on a guest for that show. We will see if that materializes. But obviously, you've got some fairly big names in there. The entire class seems to be rising, at least in the top 5 guys. So we will see how that all works out. We're going to focus on a few of the top guys and a few of the guys perhaps that we might want to take later on, maybe into day 3 as a backup. I know that we filled those roles, but we can also cut those quarterback 2 and 3 type players as well. Roar the Lions College Football podcast coming up on Wednesday. We mentioned at the top of the show, but we're breaking down the last of the Pro Day week on that show. Please, please, please stay with us. In half an hour's time, we will be with someone who I probably regard as the number 1 Detroit Lions beat writer, reporter, all-round guy, Eric Schlitt, also regarded as not a real reporter or a plastic reporter. We don't believe that for a second. The best guy on the beat. So 30 minutes time will be up with a new link if you're watching on YouTube so I'll send that out in just a moment, but we will see you in 30 minutes time. Don't forget our socials, Roar the Lions UK on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the group Roar the Lions Detroit Lions Fans UK One Pride Worldwide. Articles coming out all the time, roarthelionsuk.com. Ash, our new writer, has just written a list of, I think it's tight ends and linebackers that we might be able to pick up in day 2 and 3, so you'll want to check that out on the website. Just remains for me to thank my co-hosts, to Ryan, to Tom, to Ant. Thank you for joining me for a really thorough and excellent podcast as always. We will see all of you guys in 30 minutes for Eric. But for now, let's go Lions, one pride.
On pride.
One pride.